than our local cable subscribers.
Jonathan, welcome everybody to the Easthampton City Council Finance Committee's second budget meeting. Tonight, we are going to be covering public safety, human services, and unclassified. We did something yesterday, and so I'll sort of recap the general format. We're going to do this a little bit differently for the main reason that we are facing a substantial override vote, and so I'm going to be allowing a little bit more public participation than is probably legally required, because I think it's the right thing to do, especially when we have a huge ask before the taxpayers. We also have an unusual situation in that we have rather than just one budget like we usually have, we have two budgets. So the way that we're going to do this is we're going to go section by section through the budget. By section, I don't mean like public safety, I mean like police or fire. We're going to discuss what the budget is going to look like without an override. We're going to discuss what the budget is going to look like with an override. Councilors are going to ask any questions that they have, and then we're going to open things up to a moment of public speak for anyone who wants to ask question or make a suggestion about this section of the budget. Now, for department heads, I am not expecting you to have answers to every single thing that people ask you. It's fine to say, let me get back to you, or I need to get some information on this. But I do just want, given what's in front of us, I want people to feel that they have an opportunity to weigh in and share their feedback. The last thing I'd want is to get further into this process and have someone to say, well, I have this great idea and I never got an opportunity to share it. So that's the general idea. In terms of members of the public, if you want to participate in that public speak time, like I said, there's going to be a section after every part of the budget. When that section comes up, I'm just going to ask that people keep their comments related to that specific part of the budget and keep it related to things that are budget focused. There are lots and lots of opportunities for us to talk about many other things in the city, including other aspects of the department's operations or sort of other big picture things about the budget or whatever. But just out of respect for the people who are here and for the fact that we have a lot to get through tonight, I'm just asking people to please focus on things that are like the specific topic that we are talking about if you choose to use public speak. I also am just asking everyone to please remain on mute unless you are speaking. And if you forget to do that, I might go ahead and mute you, but don't take it personally. Okay, so yes, Councilor Dennis.
I just want to note that there's a quorum of councilors in the room, so can you speak
Yes.
to that?
Yes, same as last night. What we're going to do is councilors are free to speak during public speak time, as they are, in fact, residents of Easthampton, but please do not jump in outside of those parameters, and please do not attempt to deliberate with the committee. Joanne, it looks like you're okay. So yeah, that's the basic idea, is just councilors, you are more than free and in fact encouraged to speak when we open things up to public speak, but just keep it within those parameters. Any other questions before we get started? No? Jonathan, how are we doing on?
Good, I'm ready to go when you are.
Let's share the screen.
All right, we're gonna start with or without override.
Start with override. Okay. Yeah, that's much better. Beautiful. Okay, so I think we're just go in the order in which these are coming in unless, does anyone have a strong preference why they need us to go out of order at all? No. Okay. And oh, one more thing, just in case anyone is here, usually this is the meeting room for CPA. If you're wanting to go to CPA, that is upstairs in the back room. So, yeah.
I can hang on.
Yes, this is the budget hearing. Okay, cool. All right, let's get started. So, first up, we have police. Chief, you want to talk us through your budget?
Sure. So if the override does pass, we looked at our upcoming year and we made a lot of cuts everywhere we could to save personnel. Did you want to go like line by line? Just want to get a quick overview, like.
Let's go quickly line by line,
all
if
right.
you know what I mean. Like, let's
Yeah.
at least touch on the various lines.
Sure. So, I mean, starting right at the top, the amount, the officers, patrol and supervisor union have a 3% raise coming. That doesn't even total it, but we had saved money by more senior officers had retired. So our personal services line came down anyway, but that's essentially a level funded spot. The next lines, the clerical full-time and community social worker are based on their step raises, their pay plan employees. So it's essentially contractual. Overtime pay, we had asked for a higher amount. We had cut it back to 150, which is the same we had the previous year. We had to go for appropriations. That's why we asked for more, but we did cut that there. The next two lines, we asked for the same amount, but we cut it down 10,000 and 5,000 for each of those two lines. OIC pay is when, so if no sergeants working, and that we have traditionally that usually, well, you can see it's around anywhere from 4,800, 5,600. So we go a little high, so we are covered and usually do give back some of that money. Longevity is an easy one. It's based on our department, what officers receive it. We know and can easily budget for that number based on their contract. Incentive is a little bit of a tougher one. That number, it did come down. We have younger officers that are a lower pay scale. We had 2 officers retire last fiscal year, last calendar year. One was actually in the fiscal year before, but both had bachelor's, one had a bachelor's, one had a master's degree, and they had rank. So that number actually came down, and that's based on where everybody is at right now.
So just to clarify there, incentive is additional pay that officers receive if they've completed higher education.
Correct. It's based on, in years past, there was what was called the Quinn Bill, and it was used to be funded by the state. And it was taken over by municipalities probably at least 10 or 15 years ago. And it's based on the state model, and it's based on your degree. So if you have an associate's degree, it's 12% of your pay. Bachelor's is 24, master's is 30. So, and that can fluctuate. So if we had 2 officers, that one was a detective and one was a supervisor, and now we have currently 2 that one just came out of the academy last week and one officer that just started in October. That's a much lower incentive rate. Plus, we're not to get out of going through the lines, but one of the things we did also is kind of restructure lower overtime pay that we're looking at. So we're doing some restructuring where we're going to be using less overtime. You get incentive on your overtime. So by using less overtime, we're also going to be using less incentive. So that's why that number's, pretty substantially lower than last fiscal year. EMT incentive is essentially on the same lines. If our officers are EMTs, they have a 9% stipend in their contract. And that number is based on the pay over however many officers getting that 9%. Police specials, we shaved just a little bit off. In years past, we hadn't been using the full amount, but it's because we're down to only 2 special officers. A special officer is a part-time officer that can contractually fill in certain shifts. With our restructuring that is coming, already kind of started, but definitely coming July 1st, there's going to be much less overtime. But when those officers fill an overtime shift, it's a flat $25 an hour. If you have the salary ranges so much, I mean, if the most senior lieutenant, it works an overtime shift, works the overnight with his incentive, it's probably 3 times that amount per hour. So we're gonna save a lot of money, and we were just able to hire 3 specials. All 3 are recent retirees from surrounding departments and from the area. So looking forward to that. They're just getting started. Shift differential is another one. It's based on contractual. It's if the officer works in overnight or the evening shift, they get a small, I think it's like 25 cents an hour more than the people that work the day shift. And that's what that 7,500 totals up. Holiday pay is another one that's budgeted based on contractual. It's figured out the officers that are working throughout the year because on a revolving schedule, we work holidays, and that's something that's been in contractual that you're paid your day's rate on top of your pay. So it's essentially I think we're up to 13 days now with Juneteenth, be 13 days of pay for the officers that are in the patrol and supervisors union that qualify for that. The next line is blank. That's the numbers used when we have to do buyouts. Like we just had an appropriation for Detective Regalski, who retired in October, for all his earned time that he had accumulated over the years. Court time, we shrunk up a little bit. We have a part-time officer that's covering court, so that's why that number can stay. It used to be covered by a full-time officer, but we were able to work with the unions about, by 22 or 23, where a part-time officer does it. It's basically like a 20-ish hour a week job, but some weeks 40, some weeks less. And that also includes any time officers are called into court to testify for any cases. So that's the overtime for court only as well. Unused buyback, that's going to be zero also. That's if an officer retires, but that we can't budget for because we don't know if anybody's leaving. And then uniform allowance is contractual. It's $1,000 per officer times 30. Okay. Keep rolling or?
Yeah, let's go to expenses.
All right. So the next 2 expenses are built in for new hires. There you get contractually a certain set amount of uniforms. We also have to equip them and get them uniforms for the police academy. Along with that is the medical expenses are all the testing that's required by the city and the state to get somebody into a police academy class. Based on our tough times, and I don't foresee anybody retiring, there's a good chance that money will just go right back to the general fund and be unused, unless somebody decides to leave through the year, which we don't see happening. Education and training is for classes that most of them are state mandated, that we ask for the same amount as we did the year before. We generally use right around that amount. That's to enroll in classes, the tuition for it, the travel to and from, and things like that. Few lines, the professional services, office supplies, they all kind of cover the same thing. It's paper, stamps, any postage, envelopes, everything of that nature. Office supplies, if we have the money, if we ever need equipment, like chairs or desks, we can take out of there, but you can see we haven't used very much in the past years and usually give money back. We actually worked out a deal with Mass Mutual and they donated a ton of equipment. We redid our sergeant's office with 4 desks and our detective's office with 4 desks. So that saved us quite a bit of money. It's all great equipment. Auto supplies, I wish we could double that number because oil, gas, tires, wear and tear every year is going up, and every year we can't stay in with that budget just because our aging fleet. I don't know what this year will bring for cars, but if we don't get a new car, then all those cars are 1 year older, and that number is just, we go through it very quick. We're going to do our best to stay within it. That is one tough number that we asked for more this year, and unfortunately, the last couple of years, did have to go back for an appropriation request. Food and food service supplies, that we rarely use. That's if fire department has a structure fire. They're out there, our officers are out there for hours on end. We'll run to Big E's and get cases of water and grab a pizza from like Village Pizza, and just so it's paid out of our budget somewhere. But I don't remember the last time we used that, honestly. Books and periodicals are there's certain subscriptions that we have to, based on updates and laws and stuff like that, that we have to subscribe to. And then every like 2 or 3 years or so, we buy a brand new set of criminal law, constitutional law, and motor vehicle law books that are very well written. They're written for cops. It's quick and easy to look things up, elements of crimes. Unfortunately, it's like college textbooks, so they're like $100 each book. So that's that. Canine expenses, that's what we use to groom and feed Jerry and Gino. The public safety supplies, that's most of that budget is used up for items that we're required to buy every year for training, such as our biggest expense is ammunition. We're required by the Mass Post Commission to do a minimum of 8 hours of training and fire a certain amount of rounds. And that is unfortunately the cost of doing business, which everything happened nationally. It isn't really helping our cause with prices on that. In-state travel, again, another one we barely use. That's if we have classes, if somebody needs to take a personal car and use some fuel, or even lunches at the trainings if they're not included. That's another one I used a couple $100 each year. Dues and memberships. I have a list of all our dues and memberships, which are all so some are required, such as our mass police IDs. There's a standard ID. The state makes us pay for them. The supervisors union negotiated years back the Mass Legal Defense Fund. It's $300 per officer. That's just for our supervisors. There's 8 of them. The Mass Police Accreditation Commission is something new that we are working hard on and working towards, and because of the size of our city, that's $3,220 each year. Contractually, there are 3 associations that the deputy chief, the chief, and actually those 2 are, it's just we're members of the Western Mass Chiefs of Police. All our union members are in, but they also pay $20, 20 or 22 per member. We pay out of pocket for that one. So that's essentially just for like our department, the 520 for the year. But the other 2 are the Mass Chiefs of Police and the International Association Chiefs of Police, which they have various trainings and conferences throughout the year. In-house attorney is fantastic. He's almost daily. If you've ever had in any of the meetings, like we just had the e-bike regulation in public safety committee, and that's attorney Asapenis. That's like his feet built into that. So, so that is our police budget.
Okay. Now, do we, just any questions structurally about that before we look at the, counselors, before we look at the budget without the override?
See which of my questions have already been answered here.
I just want to try to understand the subtotal personal and the expense. You have a uniform allowance for $30,000, but you have a uniform expense. Can you help me understand the distinction between those?
Yep. So the uniform expense, that and the medical expense are, if there's a new hire, they have to go through. So the medical expenses for all their different, they have to go through a bunch of different a psychological exam, a few different doctor's appointments that check basically everything regarding their health. The uniform expense is that is for in their contract, they get a set of uniforms when you're first hired. We also have to uniform them and buy all the equipment for them to attend the police academy. So that's what those numbers are. And then
Those are different uniforms.
the academy, yeah, they're like a brown khaki state, yeah.
And then the uniform allowance, does everyone get a new uniform every year?
So there's $1,000 that every officer gets. So some use it to buy winter clothes, some summer,
I see,
some,
I see, I
it's,
see, I see.
yeah, it's, most people go to Central Uniform in Chicopee, but they can also go to, what's Springfield, I'm blanking on it. Guardian, thank you.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
I guess my one question, it does sound like some of these items, I'm not trying to challenge this too much. I'm just making sure I understand it. Some of these items, it seems like you have a budget here in case somebody retires and we end up hiring somebody new, but that you're thinking that we might not end up spending that money if we don't end up hiring someone and you don't necessarily foresee somebody retiring. Like, is that, but you mean who knows, but is that, do I understand that correctly?
In a nutshell, yes. And just before we, and I don't know if the HR director, medical expense, is that where line was to come out like for our officer that's hurt right now? Would that come out of my,
No, that's
that's all
separate.
insurance? Okay.
That's separate.
I
The
just
medical
wanted to make sure I wasn't
expenses are-
misspeaking, but
Yeah,
yes.
Okay, so those items are primarily in the case that we need to onboard like a new officer.
Yep.
Okay.
And just to clarify, you have a certain amount listed here for overtime pay. You've noted a couple ways that you think that might be able to decrease that, but we have historically been going above that amount. Are you anticipating probably some appropriations there?
I hope not. What we're doing is we're gonna be shifting people around, so we're gonna, regardless on the override, we're gonna be pulling officers like our traffic officer. He has to work different shifts. Almost all, if not all, of my officers are willing to pretty much do anything to save as many jobs as we can and with no disruption to our force. So jobs or positions like that, positions like our training sergeant, it's a full-time job with the Mass Police Commission. He is just all day, every day dealing with training stuff, making sure everything's in order, looking for trainings, getting in trainings. He's going to be doing a dual role where if there's short officers on the day shift, traditionally we would have a special officer or a full-time officer work overtime to make sure we have 3 people on the street. And then our training sergeant's still there. He'll be doing a dual purpose. So we'll save on that. So little kind of tweaks to the department where people are going to be picking up extra work, but not extra pay. And again, everybody right now is willing to do what we can to stay within our budget. And that's definitely my goal. The only thing I can maybe foresee is we do have one officer out injured right now. And if we're talking solely on the, if it goes through, if the override passes, confident I can stay within that 150. Hopefully she's waiting on an operation. Hopefully it won't be too long of an absence. But if the override passes and if that number is approved, I am confident I can make that happen, barring any long-term injuries or, like last year we had an officer gone for a year or two in the military. So.
Chief Alexander, I'm only using this as a point of reference, so I'm not harping on this particular thing, so I just want to be clear about that. So the uniform allowance in 2024 was 21,750, and this year, for what's being requested is 30,000. Does that mean that you had fewer officers in? Okay, so you had the same amount.
The uniform allowance, I'm trying to do the math as quick as I can, but I think our uniform allowance back then was $750 per year.
Yeah.
And then with the rising costs, the mayor, I remember, did up it.
Yeah, I'm not worried about the uniform allowance. What I'm trying to get at is the number of officers that you had, if that has increased over time. But it sounds like you've had the same number of officers.
Yeah, if you add in part-time officers that we lost due to the post commission, we actually are down numbers since a few years back.
Okay, yeah, I'm just trying to understand the number of officers. Thank you.
It actually brings up, I wanted to, this is something that has been a sort of a sticking point in some of the public discourse. So I just wanted to have this up that we could refer to it periodically, is the, that is true. I just wanted to be able to refer to it myself. Right, so police did go up a little bit. It looks like, at least in full-time equivalents from FY 22 is 27.86, and then that became 29.94, 34.94 is now down to 30.94. That's what's in here anyway. Is that something, I'd be interested in just your response to that.
I honestly, I don't know if, is Cindy Perry on the call? The admin assistant? The only thing I can think, I know there was a short time we had one
Right there.
officer on a grant. And then that grant went away, which is why the number should have come down. Is that not, the officer's no longer here?
It did come
Well,
down between this year and last year, but it went up for a little bit. And
Might have been something too with specials. I'm
Uh-huh.
curious because this is like the FTEs are not always entirely accurate, to be honest, because they're based off of the budgets presented and what was presented last year. So it may not have perfectly matched up with what the actual FTE was. So, because like a special or something might have been a half FTE or something like that. So we have lost that or.
There was a time when we had
CCOs.
like 7 or 8
So,
specials
yeah,
and
that-
some have gotten hired.
yeah.
Some just left
lost a
because they
couple.
didn't meet the requirements of the Bridge Academy. There was
Yeah.
2, I think, Turgeon and,
And then
Mhm.
our, I'm sorry, MS position, she used to be grant funded, correct? And also
So
wasn't
she-
an employee for a while, correct?
she is in our budget and she
Yeah.
was originally with CSO. And then was it last year? I think it was 2 fiscal years ago, she became a police or a city employee in the police department budget.
Mhm.
Then she just joined the union
Yeah,
in
she did.
like August.
So it could have been some of that personnel wasn't accounted for correctly in the prior year, is
Alright.
my assumption.
I don't need an answer on this now, but if you or someone from your staff wouldn't mind just emailing me just a little narrative and explaining kind of what's driving that trend, if you could just get to the bottom of it, that would just be helpful for me to just broadly understand kind of, what's going on and making sure that I'm relaying accurate information to
Yeah,
the
of
public.
course. Yeah, I'll dig into that tomorrow and get you an answer. Hopefully, if not tomorrow, then by Monday.
Great. And can you share that with both?
Yeah.
committees?
The
With the
whole-
full council, really, probably.
Yep.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate that.
Question, if you don't mind.
Just 1 sec. We're gonna do the budget without the override, and then we're gonna open it up to anyone to ask questions. But appreciate that. Do we want to jump into the no overrides situation, or does anyone have? Okay. Take it away, chief.
All right, so I'll try to be as brief as possible because a lot will pretty much make sense, but starting right at the top, so the number, the new number is because we're gonna have to lay off unfortunately 2 police officers. The main bullet points are, we're gonna lose 2 officers, and then I'll go through the numbers where we're gonna be cutting overtime. And to achieve that, the department is gonna have a much different look, even though it's only 2 people. It's about 7.5% to 8% of our workforce. What it's gonna look like is, so on shifts where we have like 4 or 5 scheduled, and if somebody takes a day off, we'll run with 3. Evening shifts, it's always been the minimum staffing was 4 officers every day of the week. Now we're gonna have to do it with 3 and make it work. What that'll look like is, longer response time to calls, and it puts my officers in danger because now you have only 3 officers covering the whole city. So if you have a car accident on the mountain, but then you have a fight going on at one of the bars, we're going to fights all by ourselves. It's not good.
When you say officers, do you mean officers on patrol or officers total?
Total.
Total.
Yeah. So like on a day shift, we should be good and not have to worry about overtime because so the day and evening, we're splitting up our detective bureau, and some are gonna have to work nights and some are gonna have to work days. And if to a minimum number, say we only have 2 officers scheduled, then a detective will have to put a uniform on and put all his detective work on hold until hopefully the next day that he's back in. Staffing will be returned to normal. But the day shift, so there's 2 detectives and then there's also the deputy chief and I. So I mean, worst case, we can respond to calls. So that's where, when you get down into the overtime numbers, you'll see that it's a drastic cut, only 94,700. Read that right. 92. Oh, yeah, bigger and so 92,700 coming from the 150. So again, that's the way we're going to hopefully get there is, one, by only running shifts with 3 officers, which is going to be dangerous and it could, make our response times a lot longer. But where it's really going to hurt the public, in my opinion, is we are not going to be able to do a lot of the community functions that we do, like, the Rag Shack Parade, the Memorial Day Parade, Jubilation, Winterfest, Rider Bike to School Day. Because if we have only 2 officers, or 3 officers rather, working for the whole city, I mean, we can't even shut down from the Maple Street School to Pine Street with
That
3
takes 2
officers.
people right there.
Yeah. But with no overtime budget, we just won't be able to do those functions. And that's the last thing I want to see or hear. Living here since the day I was born, having 2 kids, 11 and 9 years old, like, it's stuff like that they look forward to all year. And those are the unfortunate things that you're going to see if this override doesn't go through. So sorry, I'll keep going with the numbers. I know so the 2 layoffs, it covers the first one. There is a proposed cut to the my administrative assistants pay. I think the total is around $5,000 for 3,600 whether the override pass or doesn't pass. So she'll be making the same she was making 2 years ago.
Just to be clear, that would be a reduction in hours that would lead to a
Yes,
reduction in
2
pay.
hours, right? 2 hours per week.
Yes, because she falls within the union.
House me?
Yeah.
Okay.
The overtime I kind of covered and what that'll look like. But that's, we kind of have a plan. The next 2 overtime lines, again, were cut by a third. The OIC, officer in charge, longevity stays the same because those are budgeted based on the officers and what they contractually would be getting. The incentive number drops because of the 2 layoffs and the reduction in overtime. The EMT incentive, again, that number goes down due to the 2 officers that will be laying off our EMTs. Our special budget is staying the same. That way we have the coverage to use our part-timers because it's like I explained, it's a big savings compared to using a full-time officer. Shift differential will go down because we'll have less officers. The holiday pay again because we have less officers. Court time is staying the same. That's always runs pretty tight. And then uniform allowance, that somehow I got in mind 28. So if we have 2 layoffs, that number actually could be to 28. Going back down now to expenses, the first 2 expenses, medical and uniform. We didn't want to zero them out to in case we do have to hire a new officer, even though, we'll have 2 new officers, 2 officers hopefully coming back to us after their layoff. But that's why that number was cut down. The education and training number was cut down. I don't think we could realistically do it for less than 15,000 just based on what the state requires from us. That's going to be a tough number to stay within. The next few lines are staying the same. The postage, office supplies, auto supplies. The biggest changes down are, so the K-9 expenses, the $5,000 that pays, grooms, and takes care of our 2 K-9s. So we're gonna wipe that out, and we're gonna hopefully, there's some money left in the K-9 donation account. See how far that'll go. And then if we have to dip in our own pockets to feed our dogs, we're gonna, pass the hat and buy dog food. The public safety supplies, that number, we're hoping, like I said before, our biggest number is ammunition, which is all required
Mhm.
to keep up with state standards. That number wouldn't cover it. However, with money we have currently and the ammunition we still have, hopeful that we'll be able to just at least get through and have enough to keep up with our state mandates because we have to. The next two numbers, well, in-state travel stayed the same, but the dues and memberships, that number I believe changed because nope, I'm sorry. When, in one of our first budget meetings, there was an item that we were paying for, but it was moved to the IT budget, so that's why I was confused there. But that would stay the same with the last two lines of furniture and equipment.
Okay. Counselors, any questions about the difference between these two or about Counselor Schmidt?
So Chief Alexander, when we met yesterday, we heard from a number of departments, some of which were looking at decreases to their longevity stipends. And so I just wondered if that is at all reflected in the longevity line that we see in either of these, or if they've been maintained the same.
So those are all maintained because they're all contractual through the unions. It's, we didn't, I guess, get to the point where we started looking at like what numbers would, like if all the union members didn't want to take a raise or didn't want to take a, longevity. Tough thing there. That's a tough ask to tell the guy that's been on 30 something years, hey, I know it's been in your contract forever, but you're going to get the same as the kids that have been here only 2 years. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But it's something I would pose anything to my unions because like I had already said, I mean, we want to do anything we can to not see our brother and sister officer lose a job.
I think just my understanding of that is that in those cases, and correct me if I'm wrong here, that those were mostly department heads who were
Correct.
nixing that from like non-union department heads who were
Yeah.
nixing that from their own budgets as part of their proposed cuts, which is obviously quite generous of them. But obviously that's a tough thing to ask of people who have a union contract. I have a couple questions. And the first one is just, can you help me understand? So you've got right now about 30 officers,
30 full-time
30
police
full-time.
officers.
Okay. So you're saying that laying off 2 would essentially lead to about the reduction of 1 person per shift. And I'm just trying to understand that math.
So we're going to restructure in a way that we'll actually have more scheduled in a way to save overtime we're going to do away with the traffic car, that we won't have somebody dedicated just traffic. That's going to go back into a rotation. The training sergeant will be responsible for the day shifts. Detectives will be covering patrol functions. So we'll still staff or schedule 5 or 6 officers like on the evening and the overnight. But when you have, like, if we have, an officer on vacation the week of 4th of July, and we have another officer right now that's out injured and due for surgery, when those shifts go empty,
Mhm.
we won't backfill and put overtime in to have the 4 officers. We'll run with only 3.
Okay.
So we're not like only scheduling 3. On a regular night, everybody's at work, everybody's healthy, not on vacation. There'll be 4 or 5 officers working those shifts.
And right now there are about 4 or 5.
4, yeah. So like 4, and like tonight, there's 4 officers working, but we have 1 officer out injured. Another one, I believe, was on vacation for the week. So we have 1 officer that's in on an overtime shift right now to keep it at the 4, which has been our minimum manning for a long time.
Right.
Though it's not contractual, so that's how I'm able to do it, even though I hate to do it. I don't think it's safe, especially with communities around us having to do the same thing. If Southampton cuts and they're our nearest backup, but they have no officers, only 1 working, could be scary when you're waiting for a trooper to come off the highway.
Yeah. Actually, to that end, I think one thing, and I don't need this right away, but just as we're looking through this and trying to communicate this to the public, I might personally benefit from some data on just like how often things come up where that sort of staffing level is really getting, like how many shifts are there where that becomes like a serious problem?
So when an incident happens or when we'll have 3 scheduled?
Like, so if we had 3, how many nights a year would that be a huge problem? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe I'm asking.
Yeah. So, well, the problem is it can become a problem at any time. And I mean, it
Right.
doesn't have to, I'm not talking, it has to be like the crime of the century. But
Right.
if you have 2 motor vehicle accidents at the same time in town, which happens quite often,
Mhm.
one of them is only getting 1 officer to deal with that scene and the other one gets 2 officers.
Okay.
Instead of 2 and 2, somebody to do traffic and someone to investigate and
Yeah.
to do the accident.
Let me then rephrase that as just assuming these levels of staffing and just like sort of the rates at which people were on vacation or were dealing with some medical thing or something in the past, how many shifts a year do you think we'd be down to 3? Is I think a question that I'd personally
Yeah.
answer.
So I can look at like previous year's data.
Okay.
It might take me just a little bit, maybe like beginning of next week, but
Yeah,
you
that's
give me
fine.
like, through the weekend,
Yeah.
beginning of next week, I can get all these, because that's definitely something we can
Yeah.
do up and figure out how many we had filled to make it 4.
The process is going to take a few weeks, so I'm not looking to rush anybody. I just, I want to make sure that I can communicate accurate information about sort of what the magnitude of this would be. So, councilors, do you have any more questions on the police budget?
No, I mean, I have lots of trying to solve problems in my head with the numbers that I'm seeing, but they're not useful to the conversation.
Okay. I'm going to ask members of the public if they have any questions. If you're online and you have a question, please raise your hand on Google Meets. If you're in person, please just also raise your hand and I'll call on you in the order that I see you. Sir.
Hi, my name is Paul Dice. I live on Willow Circle in Easthampton. Been here all my life. It's a really nice city to live in. It's just really great. I'm an accountant. I was an accountant when I was working. So the questions I ask are, they're numerical. I'm not talking about how it affects people. I'm just talking about numerical. So I've been through a number of downsizings when I was working. It was painful. It was awful. So I hope we don't have to do this here, but I'm just asking some questions about the budget. So in terms of full-time regular, I'm looking at what the numbers are in the budget. And full-time regular was 2.186 million in 2024 and 2.58 million in 2025. That's an 18% increase in 1 year. So I'm presuming we had some salary increases. We added some people.
So I don't believe anybody was added.
But the head count said you were going to.
Our social worker, the community social worker came on, that was FY26. But Mayor LaChapelle, I do remember, I forget what she called it. She basically restructured because that was a contract year. So that's why also like the uniform allowance went up from 21,750 to 30,000. She did contracts with the patrol and the supervisor union and figured that we were like one of the lowest paid department in Western Mass, especially, it's a wage realignment, she had called it.
Okay. So it's the realignment of wages.
Yeah,
Okay.
so our patrol and supervisors union contracts are right online. So you could see the numbers and how they broke down of
Okay.
what it came to.
So my other comment, 2 more comments. The other comment is since 2025, your increases have been very modest. So that was the one bump here. I just want to point that out. Then going forward from that, it was very modest going forward from year to year to year. So that's great.
Yeah, and how we achieve that is, so we had some senior officers, we're a department of longevity. When people come here, they don't leave here. They want to stay. Even our officers that are looking at a layoff, they were begging us, can I please stay and just be a part-time officer? I'll figure out how to support my family, whatever. And all right, if you can do it, like, of course. But the numbers, so like last year, we lost a supervisor and a detective that had combined, I think, like 70 2 years on. So they were at the top steps, they were ranking officers. So when that fell off and now it's all junior people stepping into the roles or the new spots, that's where the numbers were able to stay lower.
And just a last comment, the numbers we hear are for the cost of the officers themselves. What isn't shown in this numbers, and it's included in unclassified, are the fringe benefits that go with the officers. Those costs can be huge. They can go from anywhere to 25 to 50% of an officer's base wage. So I just want people to be aware of it, and you know it too. It's just, they're exponentially going up. So every person we hire, they're becoming more expensive. And they're a resource, so that's a good thing. We just want to be aware of it, that the more people we add, the more expensive it gets. And those costs are with us for a long time. Not a reflection of the unions or anything else. It's just simply a matter of fact.
That is a correct thing that when we talk, and we're going to talk later about unclassified, and basically everybody's benefits get talked about in that one section. So that's a good, important clarification. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tamara, I see, Counselor Smith, I should say, I see your hand.
Thanks. I just wanted to say that I appreciate that the community social worker was not deleted with the new budget in either possibility. I think that's really important for everyone to be able to see. And I just appreciated that line staying. Thank you.
Tamara.
Thank you.
Me too. Okay. So there was one thing I wanted to, sorry, sir, I didn't catch your name. There's just so much information. Paul, thank you. There's one thing that, Paul, or JP, did you have your hand up? Go ahead. I'll bring it stand up after. Yeah.
Sure. I don't know if you're ready to go. No.
No, go ahead.
All right. Just had some questions. First of all, let me say thank you so much for your thoughtfulness in this. It shows that you're working hard to try to make it all work for the officers and for the community. That seems very clear as from here. And that's appreciated.
Thank you.
One of the things we looked at, I think, yesterday was the 2 hours for certain employees, and I see that you've done that with the no override situation and with the training budget and the in-state travel. And I basically, it's just a quick question. It doesn't save a lot of money, but if you were to say this figure of 15,000 is the absolute minimum to meet the requirements for qualification of retaining the officers and the people with the training that are required. To go out and shoot, you have to take certain, whatever it is.
Yep.
And believe me, it breaks my heart to see that, because I know how hard this community has worked to see that its officers were trained and do get money and do have special opportunities. Are we at a bare minimum there, and how is that affected?
So yes, with the money, if the override passes, that's really where the bare minimum where we can be comfortable, able to send people to the classes. Not only classes that are required, but also some that will benefit the community. That number, if the override doesn't pass, the only way I can potentially see it happening is we're lucky to have a lot of very skilled officers that have been over the last couple of years doing what's called train the trainers. One of our training sergeant is actually sought out by the state. He's like the top firearms instructor in the state. So academy classes, he's brought in and trains the classes. So all of our firearms training, for instance, we're able to save money there because we don't have to hire anybody. We're still working out a deal with Springfield to use their range, but our CPR and first responder classes, we have trained trainers along with help from the fire department when we need it. So how that'll look is by using people that are on shift, on duty, not having to take time off and, maneuver manpower and stuff like that. That's how we're going to try to make it happen.
With regard to the $25 specials that you described, hiring 3 more, which will give you a total of
Technically 5.
technically 5. I imagine those people would be available to fill in various shifts, and you've said that, I think they aren't benefited, I believe,
No.
so they wouldn't be reflected in the benefit side of the budget. Is there any thought, and believe this comes from a very naive perspective, I don't do administration in police departments. So is it possible, I'm thinking if you got down to 3 people on a shift, and rather than to call back somebody who's getting $75 an hour, you have a couple of accidents, you have this, you gotta get somebody on the roof, you gotta have somebody to staff. Is it possible to have an on-call staff, people, specials, who could say, geez, maybe this person, if we train them in traffic duty, they can, the traffic that's required, maybe some handling of the emotionals with the people who may be injured and suffering dramatically from an accident.
Yes.
Talk to me about that as a way of, rather than hiring a $75 person, using specials in that type of a situation, because I'd hate to.
Point of order. I appreciate the level of detail that Councilor Kwasinski is asking, but I just want to caution us, we're really dancing on open meeting law at this point. So you need to ask clarifying questions about the numbers and not get into speculating and things like that, because, or assigning a value to what is being said to a particular number, et cetera. We really need to limit the question to the budget and not speculate, because we really are getting
Talking
into,
about $75 an hour.
I understand that, but we need to ask
That seems like a question that anyone as a citizen might ask. How would you be able to work?
So it's a brief.
yeah, so if it's limited to number, but
So very briefly, so essentially it comes down to certain ways officers take time off. They have to be filled contractually. So it's written for a specific, a personal day. If an officer's out at least 3 days in a row, every shift thereafter. So if they're on a long sick leave, every shift, it has to be filled first by a special. Anyways, even in perfect budget times. So that's, I guess, the best answer I can give you. Like, anytime that we can use them, they will be used. We have a new policy that came out, a lot of this with the police accreditation. It's all policies, rewriting everything, and our specials policy now says that they all have to, at a minimum, put in and be available to work 2 shifts per month. If there's only 3 overtime shifts, then they'll, they won't work it, but they have to minimum 2 shifts.
Thank you. Those are the questions.
Thank you.
Any other community members have any questions about? Just remember, everyone, to remain on mute if you're. Okay, I have a question, because I have my understanding of how I think this works, but I'm not sure that it's a perfect understanding, because it's been a while since I've read any of the municipal union contracts. And since this is last night we were talking about to a lot of basically 2-person departments. So a lot of the cuts that they were having was to hours or to expenses. This is the first time we're really talking seriously about layoffs. So I was hoping that you could help me to understand the process. It sounds like the way you spoke about it, like you've already identified the officers who would be laid off. My understanding is that is basically formulaic via the union contract. Is that correct?
Correct.
Could you explain the logic within there of who gets, like, who would be identified as the people?
So it's,
You don't need to name them or anything, just like the logic.
So it's the 2 newest hires, newest members of the union. So the 2 most junior officers.
Right. So basically it's whoever is the last in is the first out.
Right. So we have badge number, not like people that have rank don't, but patrol officers, they'll have a badge number.
Mhm.
So there's 20 patrol officers out of the 30. So badge 19 and badge 20 are gotta go. Or I just passed.
Right. And this is something then, in general, then that would mean that for your department and for any other department that's looking to make layoffs, the people who they would be laying off would be in general among the youngest and cheapest people who are on the city payroll, while some of the not to say that they haven't earned their pay, but some of the most expensive people on our city payroll are 100% safe from this process. I just want to just make sure we're on the same page. Yeah,
So
and
that
that's-
is-
that's not negotiable. That's in our contracts.
Correct.
But I will just note, so in our patrol and actually supervisors, I don't even know if it's 3, I think it's only 2, but on your 2-year anniversary, you hit your 3rd step. We only have 3 steps. Not like City Hall, the AFSCME and them, they have like 12 or 14 in all different grades.
Mhm.
Your patrol, there's one set of numbers, detective, supervisors, sergeants, lieutenants. And on your 1-year anniversary, you go to step 2, 2-year anniversary, step 3, and then that's it. And then everybody's equal.
Right.
So
But the particularly like the people who would be being laid off here, and again, I'm not saying this to suggest that this is the wrong way to do it, but just so that we understand the implications of this. These would be rank and file patrol officers.
step 1, patrol officers.
That would be the people, and so yes, okay, that's what I thought. Thank you. Counselors, any last questions for the police budget? Okay. Can we turn next to the, I believe it's the crossing guards budget with the.
So
Oops. Look.
are you waiting on me? Oh, I'm sorry. So for crossing guard, just do each separate. So crossing guards, we're gonna keep everything level funded as we did this year. You'll see the number went down. What we used to have a total of I believe 5 crossing guards. That number is down now. Essentially a couple had left, and we realized that we really didn't need that many anymore with now that all the schools were centrally located. Certain areas we're only having 1 or 2 children per day cross that were old enough that like they rode their bike and they were good. So we identified those spots. It'd be nice to have 1 extra, so we could have an extra down at the school. And then if one of the others takes a day off, then they can fill in. But police officers, as long as we have staffing, we're not on calls, we'll fill in and go spend the hour down there in the morning or the afternoon, or like if they have doctor's appointments, they don't have like an overtime budget. So we pick up the slack when they're out. But yeah, level funded. And then, sorry, if you have questions.
Questions on that, or do we just, I kind of wanted to just do crossing guards and then crossing guards without the
Oh, right,
override,
sorry.
and then we'll do animal control, yeah.
It might be easier to, if I may, it's gonna take me time to go back and forth.
Could you just have it up in a second tab?
If I want to share the entirety of my screen.
No, I think even, it's just a tab in that screen. Like if you just hit that little plus button up there.
See the top? Go to the top up here.
Yeah.
Where you see the
Left.
plus.
Oh, like, okay, I see what you mean.
I think that's what we were doing last night.
Let me stop sharing then, so I can kind of maneuver a little bit. I just have 2 different ones open because I had them side by side.
Yeah, makes sense.
We could be Allison here again.
Yeah.
I know, she did an
Online.
amazing
Can
job.
someone call her? See if she's up to anything.
Well, you're doing a good job.
Without override.
Okay, without the override.
So without the override, we'll make up the money through reducing hours. So throughout the year. If they're out for any reason, officers will fill in and cover that. And if it gets to the end of the year, we still need to stay within our budget, then the last few days, they just won't work those days.
Questions, counselors, about the crossing guard budget?
What does the police equipment entail? Is that like
Equipment,
vests and?
so a traffic vest and a stop sign.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
If we don't have to buy anything, then that makes up a little bit of the personnel costs.
I believe you said this already, but there's no laying off of any crossing guards.
No.
We have 4 currently, and that's what we'd be moving forward with.
Correct. So, yeah, so we would stay where we are currently. Yes.
All right, anyone from the public have any questions or comments about the crossing guard budget? All right, let's move to animal control.
So if this is back to override passing, correct?
Yes.
All right, so if the override passes, we'll stay level funded. The way the Westfield Animal Control works, we pay them basically it's kind of like an insurance policy. And then when we do have to use them, we have to pay for a la carte services, depending on what happens. If it's a stray or a domesticated dog that we find, we keep that animal in our station for at least half a day, or most of it a shift. Put it on Facebook, try to get the word out. A lot of times it kind of rectifies itself because the owner sees it, gets notified. If they have to go, that's where the extra money comes in. And those are the numbers we're right around each year.
Okay. Any questions on this before we switch over? So what would that look like without?
So without the inspection amount, we would keep the same, and we would just lower the professional services. So we have the budget this year. I believe it's 801 and change a month. So that comes out to like $9,600-ish. So there's a little bit left over for those a la carte services. So with any luck, it won't be a year like when we had that. I don't know if maybe it's just me remembering, but we had a raccoon.
Oh yeah, I remember the raccoon.
And the amount
wars.
of testing and state law made us, we had to have testing done and everything, and that was an awful year. So barring that, we should be fine.
Okay.
Chief Alexander, I just want to say I appreciate you looking over your shoulder out the window to make sure no raccoon was
Wow, look at
Yeah.
the things I've seen. I'm gonna get clawed up by a raccoon now walking back to my station.
Okay. Animal control. Any questions from the public or comments on animal control from the public? No? All right, let's keep moving. Dispatch.
All right, so finally with dispatch, if the override passes, we're gonna stay right where we're at in terms of personnel. There's some small amounts, like you'll see the personnel services go up because they are, again, also a unionized employees. So that's their union contract raise figured in. The holiday pay goes up because of the raise. Everything else, their uniform allowance, training, budget, office supplies, and travel all are requesting to be the same number.
Okay. This is a department that, when I see some people take a first look at the budget, they often note that this has grown quite a bit over the last few years. And I think a lot of that has to do with the regionalization.
Yeah, I don't know if you wanted me to kind of touch on that or.
Just a little bit.
Yeah, so a couple of years ago, before I took over as chief, I want to say it was maybe 22 or 23, the process started. So Southampton ran into a jam where they were going to lose every dispatcher but one, which you can't function like that. So we worked very quickly. We met a bunch of times with members at the state level. We're able to come up with an agreement where Southampton pays us to utilize dispatch services. It's $175,000 a year that they pay into the general fund. The good news is by regionalizing, there's a lot of grant funding available, especially at the state level, because there's a lot that goes into, it just helps having less answering points across the state. So they reward nicely, and help people get off the ground. So in the, my first 2 years, I submitted a grant this year. In the first 2 years, we were awarded a total of $1.3-ish million that went to radio upgrades, for the fire department stuff, repeaters and radio type things. The antenna, you'll notice, was taken down yesterday. The old one that it wasn't doing its job anyway, and now we have the new tower. All that was grant, for the majority of it anyway, grant funded, to get this off the ground and get it rolling. So that's where we're at with dispatch.
So a lot of these expenses are being offset by grants or by money being paid by Southampton. And now is it just Southampton still, or?
Yes.
Okay.
That's right.
So this is separate from the situation we have with the EMS for West Hampton. It's like a
Yeah.
separate regional thing. We don't do their dispatch.
No, state police, in Northampton does West Hampton dispatch.
Got it. Thank you. And any other questions before we switch to let's go to the expenses.
So if the override doesn't pass, the number.
We'll start with if it does.
We're doing the whole.
Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped expenses. Yeah, so everything is just level funded. So their education and training, a lot of it, like us, is done in-house, but some have to be done either online or in person. And then office supplies stay the same, in-state travel stay the same in case there's any travel, but the last couple of years, they didn't use the full amount, so.
Okay.
And so just to clarify for education and training, I imagine there's some sort of certification that has to happen, which is why you can't just go in and.
No,
There's a
no, so
certification.
there's a lot of training, because they have to be trained, so in everything police and fire. So it's not just answering the phone and finding out what to send. There's different programs, and I don't know if you want, so the dispatch supervisors, I don't know if you want her to speak to a little bit more, like she can tell you what specific classes they do annually, or if
Yeah, if you want.
she's there.
I just think it's important for the community to understand that this is some level of certification that they have to handle a trauma situation. It's not just like
And it's
fire
all,
department needs to go here or whatever, but there's actually some level of, they may be almost the first responder telling how to do CPR or
Right.
something like that before the fire department gets there or EMS gets there.
she cannot hear us. Brenda, are you there? Send her a message and see.
Sure. Well, we can switch over to the without the override, and if she wants to jump in after that, that's fine.
All right. So with the override doesn't go through, the biggest change, I don't know if I changed basically last week. That's what I did. Okay. So the biggest change is the personnel services. So you'll see that number, it comes down quite a bit. It's $96-ish thousand, which is the cost of employees. So like I was saying with the grants, as long as things don't change and they stay they've been for the last however long I can remember, we can offset the cost for what positions we can fund by a grant, because the development grant, like I talked about with that large amount of money, that's only for if we hire like a specialized position, like a department head. You can't just cover salaries. However, the support and incentive grant, a totally separate program through the state, allows for covering salaries. So with that, that's a big way to offset a lot of the costs, and we'll be able to save those two positions, I'm confident, so long as the grant funding doesn't all of a sudden disappear. If it does, then they'd be looking at, they have to lay off 2 people.
How many?
11 and one is considered a
11 full-time and 1 part-time.
It's like a 20-hour a week.
Yes.
You want Brenda to talk about some of the trainings they have to do?
Sure, Brenda, why don't you go ahead?
Each dispatcher has to be certified in EMD, emergency medical dispatch. We have to recertify each of us every 2 years. We have to be certified in CPR first aid. That's done every year. Next gen 911 and the continuing education of training. And we're mandatory 32 hours every year per state. By state law, we have to have additional training. And that goes for every dispatcher, including myself.
Great. And I see that item doesn't really change much either way. That's probably because that's all sort of contractual. Okay. Do we want to, are there other changes that, it seems like that's the big one.
Yeah, it is. And then if you go to the bottom, the expenses, those numbers don't change. Those we keep. We were able to save the amount the city needed saved through the personnel, and the other numbers we need because, like Brenda just explained, that they have to do that training. So we need the funds available.
So if I understand correctly, what you're saying is that in the case that the override doesn't pass, we would take 2 positions here and move them on to being supported by a grant. And so payroll would be unaffected unless we lost the grant, which is a possibility, in which case. Now, if we don't, if the override does pass, what would that grant money be spent on?
So, and I think Brenda can answer more to this, but I don't have in front of me what we've given back in the past few years, but she offsets a lot. And Brenda, if you're still there, can you answer your support and incentive grant, not the development? That money, aside from salaries, is spent on, do you have a specific thing, or is it just what comes up as you need things in dispatch?
As what comes up in dispatch, most of it is used for personal cost of the dispatch payroll. And then some of it's used for, part of it this year was used for the fire repeater and stuff like that comes up. But most of it, it's all used, whatever we're granted is used. I try to use it more for the payroll costs. So we're not asking for more money in dispatch because we have to have mandatory 2 dispatchers at all times. And if something happens where there's a fire or a bad accident or anything like that, an additional dispatcher sometimes gets called in, storms, stuff like that.
So you've used it to cover like overtime pay?
Yes, overtime if there's training, even basic everyday personal costs. I try to use the grant as much as possible.
I guess what I'm trying to ask is, like, if we had to cover these 2 positions with grant money, what would we not be doing? Like, what wouldn't be available to us because that grant money is covering those 2 positions?
So if we got no grant at all?
No, what I'm saying is we've got the grant. We use some of that money to cover these 2 positions. It's not required in the budget, but then that's money. What were we going to spend that on otherwise?
So really, like, whatever comes up, and especially since regionalizing, we ask for a lot of things in the development grant that we don't get awarded. And some of the things, like, what's a new repeater for the fire department?
We're getting the new Vision 21.
The cost of like a repeater or the Vision 21.
Vision 21s were $120,000, and those are the receiver stations for the radio boxes throughout the entire city.
Okay.
Yeah. So
right. So
it's usually big ticket items like that we're not going to be able to see otherwise.
Okay. That would just be one piece of information that I think would be helpful to me is I don't need that. I don't need this now, but when I'm just trying to communicate this full thing is like, if you have to encumber some of this grant to cover these 2 positions, just what are the expenditures that we probably would not be in a position to make with that grant money? So that's information that I would appreciate having sometime in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, I'll try to get as much of that as possible without, because like we said,
I know that there's a,
21,
there's an amount of uncertainty to it, but just
Yeah.
as much information as I can get.
and I'll also get you the amounts that we've been awarded for like the last few fiscal years.
Okay, great.
Mhm.
That on my side.
Yeah, so I just want to get clarification. So the item that you just talked about, that's kind of a one-time purchase. So this would be able to purchase something, a big ticket item of something else in the future. That's not an item that you have to buy every single year.
It's got a 20-year lifespan on both of those.
Okay, great. So that's not something, so in the past you used that to purchase those from this funds, but that's not necessarily something that you would have to purchase again.
Not my career.
Excellent. I just want to make sure, I'm just trying to make sure that we're talking big, but they're not repeat purchases.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay, that's very helpful to understand.
I'd just like to be able to wrap my head around that all a little bit better. I understand that this stuff is often complex and that there's not always simple answers, but that's what people want, and I'm gonna do my best to provide as many as I can.
I'll do as best I can.
Okay. Any other questions, counselors? Members of the public, anyone have any questions about the dispatch budget? Anyone online have any questions about the dispatch budget? Okay. I think we are good to move on to fire department.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate all the hard work you're doing on this. I'm crossing my fingers for June 9th. Thank you.
Oh, there we go. I'll be right back in.
How are you?
Well, how are you? All right, Chief. So I think we're going to use the same basic structure here that we were using going through before. So we'll go through fire budget, then the fire budget without an override, and then we'll go to EMS and so on.
Sure.
Okay.
So just walking down through the line items, full-time regular, that's the base salary is for 35 full-time regular firefighters. Salary supervisor line item is the salaries for the fire chief and deputy fire chief position. Fire, full-time clerical is the salary for the 37.5 hour office manager we have. Overtime paid of 150,000. That's the overtime for shift staffing to maintain a minimum currently of 5 people on shift at all times on our 4 shifts. Overtime for emergencies, $2,500. That's for significant or surge events across the city. If we have a large fire, we have to call back people. They would get paid for out of that for overtime. Overtime training, that's when we send people off duty to train in, for example, down to Springfield to the burn building. During their off hours, they get compensated out of that line item. Fire captain grade, that's when we don't have one of our current captains working. We have to have a firefighter work out of grade. They would get compensated the captain's rate out of that line item. Longevity is a contractual requirement for our office manager and one of the firefighters. Incentive, fire incentive, educational incentive, that is for the firefighters who have either bachelor's degrees or master's degrees. On-call compensation, $2,000. That is paid for if the fire chief and deputy fire chief are out of the area at the same time. We pay one of the captains to be available on call in our absence. Holiday pay is a contractual requirement for all members of the department for the 13 holidays, paid at 10.5 hours for each of those 13 holidays. Sick leave buyback is 0. Vacation time is 0. And uniform allowances is $1,000. It's a contractual requirement for $1,000 per person for uniforms.
Okay. Want to go to expenses?
No, medical expenses, $5,000. That is money used for new employees when we hire people. We send them for a medical exam at Holyoke Occupational Health, as well as psychological exams. So that is for new hires. Uniform allowance, that is money again used for new hires to purchase them their initial uniforms when they're first hired. And then also after they complete their probationary period, their first set of dress Class A uniforms. Next one, education and training, 6,500. That's a contractual requirement for individuals who are obtaining their bachelor's degree. They get 50% tuition reimbursement for that educational training. Office supply, $1,000 for the year, self-explanatory. Building equipment and maintenance, 4,500. That was earmarked $3,000 for the Plymouth vent system, which is a diesel exhaust removal system. So when we start vehicles up in the apparatus bays, you see those big yellow long tubes that removes the diesel exhaust when those vehicles first start up, and it's a cancer preventative initiative and helps keep the station clean. And then the other $1,500 was earmarked for the purchase of additional female lockers. As we're hiring more female firefighters, we needed additional lockers. $25,000 for repairs to equipment and vehicles. That is the ongoing maintenance for 2 engines, a ladder truck, a brush truck, and 5 support vehicles on the fire department side. And just as a side note, when you look at that $25,000, that's an increase over the years. Just to give everyone here in the public an idea, when you talk about that ladder truck's $1 million vehicle. The engines, if you purchase those nowadays, are $750,000 a piece each. And the other thing I also just try to continually educate the public about is that $25,000. I term that's really routine maintenance. If you have any unanticipated expenditures on these emergency vehicles, the example I give, and yes, it's an extreme example, but a year and a half ago on the ladder truck, we did not anticipate the diesel exhaust particulate filter in the ladder truck having to be replaced. That was $10,000. So on these emergency vehicles, you can plan for the routine maintenance of the brakes, the batteries, the oil changes, and all that. You cannot plan on some of the more significant repairs that they need. Fire apparatus supplies, $1,500. That's for your hoses, nozzles, appliances. Equipment, $30,000. That's for your annual service. Based on national standards and industry best practices, all of your fire hose, your ground ladders, your aerial ladders, your fire pumps, your fire extinguishers, your vehicle extrication equipment, and your self-contained breathing apparatus, all are supposed to have annual service done to them. That is mostly contributed for that annual service. And then it's also used for the purchase of new equipment, such as personal protective equipment. And then SCBA, self-contained breathing apparatus maintenance. That is for the air filling station we have at the fire department. That has quarterly service done to that, again, based on national requirements and standards. So that's to pay for that quarterly test, certification, and calibration and quality testing of that air. $2,000 in-state travel. That is for conferences in Worcester for the annual State Fire Chiefs Association conference for myself and the deputy, and also tolls for travel. And then dues and membership is a contractual requirement for memberships for both state, local, and national fire associations.
Okay. Councilors, any questions before we look at the no override situation?
Can you go back to the FTE? Can you look that up and
Sure.
just help the look? And it has over the last 7 years or so, has that number increased? And if so, can you help the public understand why?
Yep. So I started here in July of 2020, and at that time, the staffing here had just changed from 6 people per shift to 7 people per shift, with the city at that time obtaining a federal SAFER grant. That was for the hiring of 4 additional firefighters. That brought the 4 shifts up from 6 people to 7 people, with a minimum of 5 people per shift. I was also tasked around that same time when I came in to do an internal analysis of our staffing, and based on the operational demand, what that's going to be projected to for needs and looking like out 5+ years. We did that, and with that first SAFER grant, which is a 3-year grant, At that time, under those grants, it de-escalated, so they would pay 75% of the overall cost for those 4 positions on year 1. Year 2, they would pay 50%, and year 3 was somewhere around 30%. And that way there, the matching amount would slowly be built into it from the community. As part of that internal analysis, we found that even though we were at 7 based on the need and demand across the city for our call volume, in 2022, we applied for another SAFER grant. We received that in the amount of $1.5 million. That brought our staffing up from 7 per shift to 8 per shift, knowing we would have to also increase the minimum from 5 to 6. The reason, the importance of going from 5 to 6, this community has 3 ambulances. You need 2 people to transport patients in those ambulances. Our call volume right now, we have concurrent calls, meaning multiple calls happen at the same time. Between 35 and 45% of our calls are concurrent calls with those ambulances. So at that time, that SAFER grant, as I mentioned, the first one was kind of de-escalating amounts. That second SAFER grant that brought your shifts up to 8 people, that fully funded the salaries and benefits for those 3 years. And then the final component, as we did that internal review and analysis, just like any grant funded positions, what's your sustainability model? So back when I came in here, the annual revenue for EMS coming into the city, and just for clarification, the EMS revenue for the city, when we transport patients, we bill the insurance company. All of that money goes to the general fund. So the year before I came in here, the city was collecting $713,000 on average a year. As part of our sustainability model, when we looked at those first 4 people that were on the first SAFER grant, and then we looked at the second 4 people on the second SAFER grant, I was charged with that sustainability model process. What's that look like? We adjusted our operations internally. We worked with our billing company. We adjusted our ambulance billing rates. Prior to me coming here, those ambulance billing rates for the community weren't adjusted for over 10 years. So now looking out for those 8 SAFER positions that we're looking at in terms of sustainability, our projections for next year, which is in my budget booklet, which is online and which all you councilors received earlier today, next year we're projected to collect $1.6 million. And if you back that out, that's over $900,000 when we first accepted that first SAFER grant. An average firefighter costs $99,000.
So they're covered.
Yes.
I would also just say for whatever it's worth, that when Chief Norris came on, one thing that I remember from our first conversation with you and the council about was concerns about the level of overtime expenditure that we had been seeing in the fire department. Adding these extra positions has definitely brought those end of year supplemental appropriations down by quite a bit. So, not being short staffed means you don't have to pay as much in overtime.
And thank you for that. And again, for the public to understand, my suggestion will always be you have a shift differential of 2 people per shift based on your minimum. So again, when that first SAFER grant was brought on, it brought your shifts from 6 people to 7 people with a minimum of 5. So that helped control the overtime. We knew we had to get to a minimum of 6 people based on the demand for the ambulances. The 3 ambulances, you need at least 2 people to run those.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't even talked about fire coverage yet. If we're at 6 and all 3 ambulances out, the city has no fire coverage. You have no fire department. Yeah. But put that aside for a minute. By having 8 people per shift with a minimum of 6, to your point, that helps control that overtime line item. Because now I can have somebody out on vacation, I can have someone out sick, family medical leave, injuries. That shift differential of 2 helps control that overtime. That's what we've always strived to do and work with the city on.
Councilors, any other questions before we switch to the no override scenario? Let's do it.
You said the no override?
Yes.
Okay. All right, starting back up at the top again. Full-time regular, there will be a cut to 3-time, full-time firefighter paramedic positions, equating to just over $188,000. Full-time supervisory, the deputy chief and I, when we our department was charged initially with cutting $389,000. When that came out, the deputy chief and I sat down, we started to strategize how we were gonna get to that $389,000 overall in our department. And the first thing we did, we have contracts with the city. We basically initiated a voluntary 0% wage adjustments in our contracts. We took away our uniform allowance and eliminated the certification stipends that we receive. So that took off $8,214. Full-time clerical, we were directed to cut 2 hours a week from our office manager position. And I'll just pause here and say that right now our office manager is working 37.5 hours on paper, and we're talking about 2-hour cut. It's not a 2-hour per week cut. It's a 5 to 8 hour a week cut. Our office manager does more than 37.5 hours. When you look at the payroll challenges and complications in public safety, procurement, making sure we stay up with purchase and being that first point of contact with the public, scheduling inspections, answering questions, that is not a 37.5 hour a week position. So to say it's being cut on paper 2 hours, I'll give you that, but that's not the reality. Overtime pay, $150,000. To the point we just talked about, when we made our cuts of $389,000, we intentionally did not cut from that line item because that would not have been a genuine cut. I've told this group all the time, when you look at overtime for the fire department, there are 2 main uncontrollable variables that I wish somebody could tell me how to control. And the first one is family medical leave. And the second one is injuries on or off duty. If one of those 2 categories hits, that is going to impact your overtime. So I easily could have taken that overtime and cut $50,000 off of it. I'm telling you right now, I would be coming back for that $50,000 if I did that. Our goal is hopefully maintaining that as much shift differential as possible. People ask, what other control mechanisms have been put in place? We have a full-time training officer, Captain Dragon. So we swing him to cover shifts. That has saved over the past couple of years $20,000 a year. So if a captain's out on one of the 4 shifts, instead of hiring back someone on overtime, they're on a daytime shift, he'll swing over and cover that, negating the need to call back for overtime. That's around $18,000 to $20,000 a year in saving. The other thing we've done over the years is as we've brought on new people, they have to go to the State Fire Academy. It's a 10-week program, so they're taken off the shift. We purposely will not send people over those summer months during those peak vacation times. So now we at least have as many people available as possible to cover those shifts in lieu of people taking contractual vacation. So overtime is being left alone for those reasons. Overtime pay, emergency, I left alone $2,500. Overtime pay training. So when I first brought my budget proposal forward, I requested that to be at $25,000. The reason that request was made at $25,000 is we have the ability, while firefighters are on shift, to accomplish a lot of the training. But there's certain components I can't do while they're on duty. 2 examples I can give you that were requested for this year: live fire training and active shooter training. I can't do those on duty. So that $25,000 initial request was to have all of my members on an 8-hour day, one day go for 8 hours down to the Springfield Academy to do their live fire training, and then 1 8-hour day to do their practical components for active shooter training. For the public and everyone here, back 2-3 years ago now, the governor signed legislation where we were the first state in this country to adopt the NFPA 3000 standard, requiring some of this training for active shooter and preparedness. So that was the reason for the request. When I came forward with my first proposal, I was asked to cut $5,000 off of that to bring it on to 20,000. Then when we all learned more about the budget, and we had to make our $389,000 cut, I cut out of that 20,000, the $19,000 to bring it down to $1,000. So we will not have any outside training this year. That $1,000 is the contractual requirement for the 2 people on our tech rescue team that I have to pay them when they do outside training. The last thing I'll say about training is when you look at how that's going to impact the city, every community has an insurance service organization rating, 1 through 10, 10 being the worst, 1 being the best. For the last 20 years, Easthampton was a 5, right in the middle. And for the last 6 years, we've worked really hard. When they come in and they do an outside review of your operations, and they look at your training, they look at your annual service, your equipment and all that. And when they came in to do our last review in 2024, based on the changes we've made over the last 5 to 6 years, for the first time in this community, we went from a 5 to a 3. We didn't jump 1 place, we jumped 2 places up. And we were about 10 points off from being a 2. Now, what does that mean? That's a reflection of the quality of service that your firefighter paramedics provides this community. And it also provides the ability for individuals to have that conversation with insurance companies about their homeowners insurance and having that reduced. It's a reflection on the response that you would get. So that training is going to be impacted with that cut. Fire captain out of grade, I cut that $14,000 down to $1,000. And I make a note here that this will hinge on the captain's availability for filling any vacancies due to their time off. I made the comment earlier, if they can't hire a captain for captain, a firefighter works out of grade, I'm hoping that the captains will make themselves available so that won't happen. Longevity is contractual, I left that alone. Incentives, I was able to cut $42,160 off of that. That was mostly attributed to those 3 positions that are eliminated as firefighter paramedics. I had a couple other people adjust their timelines for the completion of their degrees, so they wouldn't be able to be eligible for that incentive as quickly. On-call compensation, I cut $2,000 off of that for that coverage for the deputy. Holiday pay was left alone as contractual. Sick leave buyback was 0. Fire and use vacation was 0. Uniform allowance. I cut $15,250. So I want to take a moment here to first publicly thank my fire union. Over the last 6 years, I've had the privilege and have been blessed working with my personnel, my union. And when we sat down and started looking at cuts, we were trying to get creative and get that number down. And one of the areas where my fire union opened up their contract was on their uniform allowance. And they all took a reduction to help me get this number down by $15,000 to meet the overall goal. And I'll talk more about where they were able to work with me and make concessions. But I want to make sure it's very clear that I would not have gotten to this point within our budgets without laying off more people than I already am. Cutting more positions if it was not for my fire union. Ordinary maintenance, I cut $4,000 off of that. Obviously, as I mentioned earlier, if we're leaving 3 positions vacated, I'm not going to be hiring people, so I don't need to send them for medicals or psychological exams. Uniform allowances, I cut down $5,750, again, leaving those 3 positions vacant. They won't need uniforms. Education and training, $6,500, I left alone. Contractual requirement, office supplies, it's minimal already at $1,000. Building supplies and equipment, $2,000, I cut $2,500 off of that. $1,500 being the lockers for the additional females lockers. And then $1,000 off the exhaust removal system, hoping that won't break and will remain in service to remove the carcinogens from the apparatus base. Repairs of vehicle and maintenance, I cut $15,000 off of that. I made the comment earlier that you have ladder trucks, $1 million, 2 engines, 750,000 each. They're emergency vehicles, they're run hard, it's New England weather. And with that $15,000 cut, service is going to be deferred, or these vehicles will be taken out of service due to cost of repairs. Fire apparatus and supplies, I cut $1,500 off of that line item. Equipment, I cut $14,000 out of that. The department will not be doing any annual service on hose, ladders, ladder truck, extrication equipment, fire extinguishers. No new protective clothing will be purchased. This is going to significantly impact the city's insurance ISO rating, operational readiness of all equipment, and the safety of our personnel. SCBA maintenance and repairs, I left that one at $1,250. In-state travel, I cut $1,000. I eliminated the annual Fire Chiefs Association conference next year for myself and the deputy in Worcester. Dues and membership, I cut $2,000, eliminated memberships to state and national associations as outlined in my contract. Stop there.
Okay. Councilors, questions?
It's more just really a comment. I just want to acknowledge the overtime. By taking off 3 people, you've obviously brought that, you've kept the overtime, I think, at 150,000, but if you go back to previous years where there were fewer firefighters on duty, that number goes up. So that's something that we could likely anticipate. So I just, I'm just trying to acknowledge that that's probably a cost that, even though it's the same, because there's a reduction in full-time regular, we can see that number go up in other areas. So it's really just an acknowledgement of that.
Yeah, to that point, Council, again, it would have been disingenuous upon myself to make a cut from that of our overall cuts when we've had conversations all these years about trying to maintain those controls and the possibility of coming back. So that's why we did not even take from that.
This was sort of a through line that I think we're going to see in a lot of budgets potentially, is that in making the sort of cuts that we are actually able to make, we invite certain liabilities, certain risks that could end up actually costing us a great deal in the long run, which is an important thing that we need to just keep in mind if we do these things. If we lay people off, but then as a result, we have to pay more overtime at a higher rate, then are we really, we can't know for sure what that's going to be. The amount of overtime that gets used is a function, correct me if I'm wrong, Chief, basically it's a function of how many things go wrong in the city, because like we don't get to be like, sorry, we're at our overtime budget, we're not sending out an ambulance, we're not sending out a fire truck. Like it's there, we're going to have to figure it out one way or another when things go wrong. And so if we aren't properly staffed up to respond to those emergencies as they come in, then it's going to end up costing us more. We're going to end up paying more because to not be properly staffed.
Yeah, and I'll talk about more when I go over the EMS budget.
Sure. Yeah.
But when we talked about the SAFER grants and that internal analysis of staffing, prior to 2020, when you look back 20 years, this city took a lot from the staffing to cover that increase in EMS demand. So you minimize the balance between fire and EMS. You're stealing from the fire side. We're now tipping back that way. And the way I phrase it, and this is just informational, that we're getting to the point where Easthampton has an ambulance service that sometimes responds to fire calls. You're getting to that point. And I'll talk about that more with the EMS budget, and I'll explain that in more detail. And for the public and people here, we really tried to provide as much clarification. We put together our budget booklet. It's available on our city website, and it's also, the link is on our Facebook page if you're a Facebooker. So it has every line item, the detail of what it is, what it's used for, and the cuts associated with that, to hopefully help the public better understand exactly. I went through it quickly. You can read in detail what each of these line items is for and the dollar amount.
Okay. Mr. Schmidt.
This is really just a technical comment, literally talking about pennies here, but I did note, holiday pay in the without override budget is actually, 88 cents higher than the with override budget. And I just wanted to point that out. I'm going to guess that was maybe, just an oversight or something not being updated along the way. And as we've discussed yesterday, there may be discrepancies between copies, but I just wanted to bring that up in case there was anything to that.
Any other questions?
I have another question, but I think being able to go through the ambulance budget as well. So I'm gonna ask it now, but it can be answered after. This was a question I asked yesterday. Can you just help the public understand what's being lost? And when you look at these two budgets, essentially what's going to be lost?
If I may, can we go through the EMS budget first, and can I
Yep.
close out with an
Yep.
overview of that?
Yep.
Sure.
That is important.
Before we jump into that, is there anyone who has questions about specifically the fire budget with the knowledge that the very closely connected EMS budget is coming up next? Yes, sir.
Yeah,
Just-
my name is Rob Martin. Just one quick clarifying question. You talked about the billing to the insurance companies, which was fairly significant. So where do you see that in the budget? Is that offset at all?
So I just talked about the budget books. If you look at our budget book that I just put online, the city, anytime they transport a patient, they bill the patient's insurance company for those services. That money that's collected, all goes into the city's general fund. And we get monthly statements and collections from them. So if I go to my budget book right now, I put this in there for the public to give you an idea. I made the comment earlier talking about the SAFER grants. The year before I came here, the city collected $713,000 and change. This last fiscal year, because we haven't closed out this fiscal year yet, FY25, we collected over 1.4 million that went to the city general fund. This year, it's going to be over 1.5 million. And then my projections for next fiscal year, the budget we're talking about, is 1.6 million plus.
So no, then that's obviously very good. So I'm just trying to understand, when I look at the budget, this document, is that in the revenue line somewhere? Where is it in the?
Halos, that one.
It will be under revenue projection, local receipts.
So where?
Revenue projections.
So it's in local receipts?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much.
All right, anyone online?
I have
Sure.
a question too.
Of course.
So just in a total budget without override, the local receipts is 7,154,000. With the override, it's $1 million less. Why is that?
So that would be part of the discussion with the revenue projection. The reason why it's less is one is a conservative approach, another one is not conservative approach.
So we're going to touch on revenue at a separate meeting. And it's a great question. I'm excited to get to
It's a
that.
huge number. I'm just asking,
Sure, yeah. No, it's a valid question. I just want to touch it when we get to that section.
where'd the money go? Like, where'd the grants go? Where is that?
Yeah, so we'll get to that when we get to it. I want to keep us.
But your point is, it doesn't show here. It goes to a general fund.
Mhm.
So where does it go? And you have a balance sheet and an income statement when you're in business. So it just goes to the balance sheet, but does it show on the income statement?
I'll give you a great example. I hope I can answer your question. So right now we have a current active SAFER grant for those 4 firefighters. So when we do payroll, those firefighters' salaries are charged to that grant account and not this line item.
Okay. So that's the net after the grant.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Makes sense?
Makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes.
Anyone else before we turn to EMS? Councilor Kwasinski.
Chief, just to follow up on the SAFER grant, the second SAFER grant. The first one you said was a 3-2-1 with, I think, 75, 50, 35.
And that one closed out about 3 years ago
About 3
now.
years ago.
Yeah.
The second grant was initiated in what year?
That ends, this coming fiscal year. It will end on March 12th, 2027.
So it ends on March 12th, 2027.
Yes.
And that was at a 35% reimbursement now approximately, or?
That second safer grant covered the salaries of 4 firefighters and all their benefits 100% for the 3 years.
100% for the 3 years.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, let's get some more of those. All right, let's turn to EMS with you. Or ambulance.
Next. Can we do ambulance next?
Yeah, let's do ambulance with you.
Sure. All right, so we'll do the same thing. Let's walk down through the line items to help better explain for people here. Ambulance EMS stipend, 18,500. That's a contractual requirement. We have an EMS ALS coordinator that gets a stipend for $6,500 for overseeing all the purchase and oversight of procurement for EMS supplies.
For ALS, that's what-
Advanced life support.
Okay,
Thank you. And then the remaining amount in that is for our preceptors. And what I mean by preceptors is people going through paramedic programs. They are required by the state to complete ride time with ambulance services. So when we have students, including our own individuals going through programs, we have 4 people going through a paramedic program right now who are doing ride time with us. When they do this ride time with us, those paramedics who precept them get a stipend of $50 per shift to oversee those students and coach them and mentor them along in their paramedic studies.
Okay. And that's contractual.
It is correct. It is contractual. The overtime emergency, $40,000. That's basically our callbacks. So right now, the way I talked earlier about finding that balance, and when we have a protocol in place when the ambulances go out of our network. Our main hospitals are Cooley-Dickinson Hospital and Holyoke Hospital. If we have one of our ambulances transport to Bay State Medical Center, and just as an aside, out of all the hospitals in our region, we go to Bay State Medical Center. It's the second most common hospital we transport to. Dispatch will automatically call back 2 personnel who are off duty and come back and cover for those 2 people on the ambulance that are transported to Bay State. When typically on average, when you have an ambulance go to Bay State, based on the travel, the traffic, and the severity of that call, and the time to transfer care over to the hospital staff, get the ambulance turned around, cleaned up, put back in service, and then to travel back here, on average, it's about 90 minutes. We lose 2 of those 6 firefighters. So to try to maintain that balance for both fire coverage and EMS coverage, we call back 2 people. The other one is, there was a comment made earlier about Easthampton. This community has a contract in place with the town of Easthampton. I actually, if you go to our website, I put a Cliff Note version of that contract, the dollar amounts and the revenues from that contract on there today for the public. But since 2020, Easthampton's had a contract with Easthampton to be the primary provider for all their EMS in that community. Anytime we go to Easthampton, based on that contract, dispatch will call back 2 people for coverage. That when that was negotiated with the firefighters union to take on those additional responsibilities, it's what they call a change of working conditions. You shouldn't just arbitrarily enforce that. You'll be paying more in lawyer fees than you will in having a negotiation. So what they did was they negotiated in good faith that 2 people would be called back because you're losing 2 people, we recall 2 people. So that is what that $40,000 goes towards, is to maintain that fire and other ambulance coverage. And then EMS incentive, that is the contractual requirement for a paramedic stipend for the employees at the fire department. Moving down through certification fees. Those are the fees required by the Department of Public Health for our ambulance license. Miscellaneous professional technical services, $58,000. That's broken out into 2 costs. The first one is $55,000. We talked earlier about billing of patients. The city has a contract with Coastal Medical Billing, and we pay them a percentage for what they collect for the city of Easthampton. So that $55,000 is earmarked for them providing that service for billing out the insurance for those patients. And then the other $3,000 on there is for our subscription to HandTebi. HandTebi is basically an app that allows all of our providers access to information for pediatrics. So when you talk about some of the most challenging calls that are out there, the low frequency but high risk calls, pediatrics certainly come to the forefront. And in order to provide our personnel all the resources for these high risk, low frequency, high risk calls, having that app on their phone so they can go, as they're responding to the call, they can pull up the drug dose calculations, medications, the tube size, the IV catheter size for that pediatric call they're going to help expedite that care. So that's what that line item goes towards. Vehicle equipment and repairs. Again, when you look at this one, just like I mentioned on the fire side, so we have 3 ambulances. One of them is a 2018. That 2018 has 140,000 plus miles on it. These 3 ambulances are run daily across the areas going to hospitals, and that is for the routine upkeep and maintenance. And this is an opportunity also just to, I'll say, give a shout out to motor repair. Motor repair through the DPW does our service. They do a phenomenal job and saves the city a ton of money. If we had to contract all the work they did out for these emergency vehicles, it would be a greater expense. But when you look at that $8,000, that's for your batteries, your brakes, your oil changes, your filters. And I'll say the same thing I said for the fire apparatus. It does not take into account any unanticipated expenditures. So if you have an engine blow on these, that's not going to be covered with $8,000. But again, we've talked over the years, I like it better having the knowns and justifying and documenting reasons and then coming back, explaining it with the city leadership. I'm just, maintenance agreements, $27,000. Based on our state ambulance license, the state comes in every year and they audit us for our ambulance license. And as part of that audit, they look at our service agreements. We have to have service agreements in place for our cardiac monitors, our stair chairs, our stretchers, our defibs, and our automated CPR machines. So that covers those annual service agreements. Oh, and the power load systems as well. All of those requirements for our ambulance license, that's what that covers. Medical supplies, $65,000. I will just make a note here, when this was initially proposed, that was proposed to be $70,000. Again, based on the call volume, the cost increase for medical supplies. These are supplies that I always try when I try to educate people about our budget. These are more of your disposable supplies. These are ones that when we use on calls, they're tossed out. You don't want to reuse them again. That was, I was asked to cut that down $5,000 during the initial budget deliberations. Then when you look at ambulance supplies, that one there is more of your recurring reusable supplies. So what do I mean by that? The straps on the stretchers, the mattress on the stretchers, those items that can be econ, but over the course of time need to be replaced, but they can be used multiple times. Those are those hard reusable items for that line item. And then the other one is memberships and associations. Those are for your local and state memberships for EMS organizations.
Okay. Any questions before we switch to the no override?
Chief North, can you say a little bit more about $4,000 for the overtime pay? Where does that $40,000 come from?
Where does it come from? So that number initially, so let me back up. When we talk about the Westhampton contract, so the Westhampton contract, again, back in 2020, they had a contract with the town of Westhampton. And at that time, when I came in here, they were charging the town, it was a 3-year contract, and it was an annual stipend of $25,000 for the first 3 years. The intent of that $25,000, what I call is a retainer fee, a retainer to provide those services. The intent of that at the time, and still going forward, was to provide the ability to fund the recall of those 2 people who got recalled when the ambulance goes to Westhampton. Then over the years, as we renewed that contract, My first renewal working with the previous city administration, the negotiation was for 35,000 a year, 37,500, and then 40,000 on year 3. And in addition, it's important to understand as part of that contract and those monies, not only did it go towards the concept of recall, we also obtained a used cardiac monitor valued at $30,000 at the time, which allowed us to put that on the engine and make that a paramedic engine. And then the most recent contract that Mayor Derby worked with the town of Westhampton on, which will take effect July 1st, we increased the cost to them by 50%. So this July, we'll be billing Westhampton $60,000. Next July will be $65,000. The following July, $70,000. And again, to your point, the intent of those retainer fees are to help cover those costs.
So the contract more than covers itself.
Yes, right now, when I ran the numbers today, which are on our website that is available to the public, for this current fiscal year, with the $40,000 we billed them July 1st, and when we also added in the transports and the insurance collected from them, we're at $99,000 and change right now for the town of Westhampton for collections to the city of Easthampton. So I'm anticipating it'll be around 105,000 by the end of June.
Thank you. Any other questions before we switch? All right, let's talk no override.
No override. Ambulance EMS stipend, I left alone because of the contractual requirements. The overtime pay, which I kind of just elaborated on a little bit, but I just want to expand on it more just so people understand, just for informational purposes. Again, we heard about why it's there, but I think it's important to understand. I always talk to people about our mission. Our mission in the fire department is to provide fire protection and EMS services to community standards. And we were able to do that and find a better balance to complete that mission through this use of recall. When we look at a minimum staffing of 6 people and 3 ambulances, our concurrent call overlaps are averaging between 35 and 40% of concurrent calls. That leaves you 2 people at times, and sometimes 0 people when all 3 ambulances are out. If a fire call comes in, you're going to have limited staffing and you may have no staffing. So let's first talk about the limited staffing. If you have limited staffing, one of the things I outline in my budget booklet online is the federal requirements and state requirements through OSHA and the Department of Labor and Standards. And what that talks about is the importance of 2 in and 2 out when people are working in an area that are immediately dangerous to life and health. And basically the Cliff Note version of that regulation is anytime you have 2 people enter an IDLH, an area immediately dangerous to life and health, you must have 2 people outside before they go in there. There's exceptions. I talk about that as well. So if we pull up to a fire with 2 people on an engine and we're met by someone outside who said there's someone trapped inside. With 2 people, although dangerous and not safe, you risk a lot to save a lot. They can make entry and try to do a primary search in there. If you change that scenario around, if we're met outside by someone and everyone's out of the hall, no one's in there, and there's a fire in the back bedroom, we are not doing any interior operations until more people arrive. Otherwise, it'll be a violation of federal and state regulations and certainly a risk to our safety. So that's the biggest driving factor in our budget for that recall.
So just to make it clear, the idea is that these overtime things would be slower. So the idea is that we might at times have a slower response time to something like a fire. Is that what you're saying?
This community has a greater potential of having a engine arriving first from a neighboring community.
Councilors, questions, comments?
I guess, and apologies if I missed this while I was trying to take my notes here. Obviously, removing the emergency pay is substantial in this. Is that directly tied to what you were just explaining? I just kind of missed that initial context. Gotcha, thank you.
And I think also, you know, again, over the years, I'm very proud of our department and some of the adjustments we've made. And again, when you look at industry best practice and national standards, and you look at a typical residential fire, what they're going to tell you is you should have 16 to 17 people on scene for the initial attack operation of that. Is that realistic for a city of Easthampton to have that staff and model? Absolutely not. So how do we get there and how do we affect that to meet that national standard? Back 6 years ago, for the first time, we put in place what they call automatic aid agreements. So as of today, right now, and for the past 6 years, when a call comes in for a fire in Easthampton, once we're dispatched out for all the resources we have here, they also call Northampton for an engine and an ambulance, Southampton for an ambulance, and an engine from Barnes. That helps us get those resources moving that way to help us affect our operation until we recall our people, get them back here as well to supplement that operation. So, you know, certainly we have tapped every option out there already. Public, and we talk about control measures that have been put in place. Back in 2020, this community was going to the city of Holyoke over 100 times a year for ambulance responses. They were coming over here, 0. The town of Southampton, we were going over there 150, 200 times on average a year. They were coming over here a dozen times a year. That's not mutual aid. The city was providing a service to those outliers, and we were subsidizing a service that they should be providing. I canceled those mutual aid contracts. We renegotiated it, and we told both communities that we'll give you the first 20 calls mutual aid for free. After that, we're going to charge you $500 a call because it's not the responsibility of the Easthampton taxpayers to be subsidizing a service over there. Holyoke chose not to do it, so we did not renew a contract with them. To this day, we do not go there for that reason. Prior to July of 2020, we were going over there all those times with our resources. Southampton, we did the same thing. We charge them now $500 a call. Right now, it was last fiscal year, we collected between $45,000 and $50,000 from them for that billing, on top of what we transported, what we billed the insurance and the patients as well. So in terms of control measures, we've looked at our operation. We understand mutual aid, but it's not our responsibility to subsidize other communities, nor is it their responsibility to subsidize us. Mutual aid was intended for those surge events, not your day-to-day calls. That's the responsibility of the communities. We have adjusted, we made corrective measures, we made the financial changes, and we've seen it in the revenue collected, and we've seen it in our control measures of our expenses.
That is chilling. Okay. Counselors, any further questions for the public? All right. Anyone from the public have any questions about the ambulance budget? Questions or comments in person, online? Anyone? All right. Yes.
With regard to the concurrent times, I think you said 35 to 40% of the time you're sending 2 ambulances out. That happened to me earlier. 2 ambulances out at the same time. Let's say an ambulance goes to Bay State and you said the turnaround time is about 90 minutes.
Correct.
Typically.
Correct. On average.
Let's say you have a situation where 3 hours into after you got that first call back, you send somebody to Bay State, you called in a call, two people on call back. They come into the station, call back. They're getting what, overtime for that?
Correct.
How does that kind of?
Contractually, they get 4 hours minimum when they come back.
4 hours minimum at time and a half at straight time?
Overtime, time and a half.
So it's really the equivalent of 6 hours, essentially.
Yes, more or less. Yeah, correct.
So for come back. And let's say the ambulance returns from Bay State and you're 3 hours into the call. You don't have to call anybody else in, right? Because that person the two you call back are still there.
The policy is the recall people come back on overtime cannot leave the station until all the regular staffing for the day are back. So if I understand your question correctly, ambulance goes to Bay State.
Right.
We recall 2 people. Second call comes in. They go do that call. They go to Cooley Dickinson Hospital. Ambulance comes back from Bay State. Those 2 people are staying until that ambulance from the hospital of Cooley Dickinson comes back. So
Let's say you get a third call, 3 hours in. Ambulances come back, now you're sending it, that looks like that one's going to Bay State too.
if those 2 people haven't left yet, they're staying. They would not get another 4 hours in that case.
But let's say they've left.
Then
You have
we,
another call.
then we recall 2 people again and they would come back. And please understand, this is on their days off.
I get it. And you want people to come back and be incentivized to come back.
So it's their days off, they're coming back, just to be clear.
How often does that situation happen?
How often are we doing recalls?
Do you have any records on that?
We're doing recalls daily. Daily. So Cooley Dixon Hospital is the hospital I go to the most. Bay State's the second most. And again, you know, when we looked at I talked about the minimum staffing, and right now it's at 5. We're going up to 6. And the intent was to slowly wean off those callbacks because you're building up your minimum staffing. But again, the whole goal is our mission is not just EMS service. It's fire and
It
EMS.
seems it with the number of runs you have.
Correct. But I don't want to be on the receiving end when a fire happens in this community and there's a 12-minute response from Northampton because our people are all gone on ambulance calls.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, let's move on. I think EMS or building. Yes. Ambulance is EMS, right?
Can I actually ask a question? I could ask the question, kind of the impact on the city.
Oh, I'm sorry. So recap for the city. Thank you for that. Sorry. In terms of the recap for fire and EMS, in the event the override does not pass, we're looking at cutting the 3 positions. The overtime will go up because of that. The impacts will be the city ISO rating. That was a 5, that's now a 3. That is going to go back to a 5. Our training is absolutely negated. The training is decimated. The service to the vehicles, the service to all the emergency vehicles is going to be, it has to be deferred. I have no other option. The annual service of all the equipment based on the national standards I spoke about already is not going to happen, which now puts that in that operational readiness is not going to be as effective. And then in terms of the 2 last things, and we talked about it in detail, is if we've got 6 people on duty, what you have is what you get. And based on the operational demands in this system, those 6 people, it's not adequate. You have to at least have, at a minimum, that callback ability to maintain that balance of fire and EMS protection. And then the last thing is, I talked about it with the federal regulations. Right now, if I have my full shift of 8 people on there right now, and I have 2 ambulances out, I have a fire come in, I can send the engine with the other 4 people, those 2 and 2, 4 are gone. I at least have 2 in and 2 out to meet that federal and state regulation. We can start interoperation immediately. If I have a greater potential, if less people show up on scene, those interoperations will be delayed, impacting property damage. That's the snapshot. Everything's on our website, everything's on the Facebook page, and we have our informational sessions coming up as well. And I hope I hope the room is packed. So happy to talk about this.
Thank you. Chief.
Yeah, thank you.
Just want to say, I appreciate the passion you put into this.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, no, so, you guys have our budget booklet and it's available to the public online as well. So, thank you.
All right. guess we should just keep moving along. Into public safety, so let's head to
Veterans first, right?
human services.
Yeah,
So
that's- I think they want to do veterans first, or they.
Mine will be, should be quick, I would imagine.
I'll make it quick.
go ahead.
All right, ready to go? All right. So right now, what I see is, for the veterans agent salary, it's, I just want to note that, we are kind of in the middle of a restructure. Because right now the veterans agent position is in the union and the veterans agent is now considered a department head. So, we're going through, the upgrade from a G to an F. No, F to a G, excuse me. F to a G. And so, the number in there is based on my current grade. So it would change a little bit. It's not going to be a huge change. Nothing very significant. I will add though that, for veterans agents, if, my kind of counterparts in other communities like South Hadley, Belchertown, Wilbraham, they're typically 40-hour-a-week positions. And, so, and I mean, I think the salary's in line with what they're doing. And so that's not an issue, but I do typically work over 34 hours. And so losing 2 hours is a bigger hit than what the actual numbers show. Especially considering the lack of any kind of budget that's left over based on the, what would happen if the override doesn't go through. And then we'll get to that, obviously. The clerical position, that is just by, the union contract. And, so it's, right now she's at 20 hours a week. Education and training, that's another one that, I have to keep up my CEUs, to be an accredited VA claims agent. And, I understand that, that is not a requirement of the job to be an accredited claims agent, although it should be.
What does CEU stand for?
CEUs?
Oh, CE.
Yeah. Yeah. So that, there's a couple of things in there that, if it doesn't go through, it's $400. The $500 line item, that's just for the software for my VA claims. It's annual. Right now it's a little bit under 500, but prices go up every year. So I can't really predict what it's going to be. Probably be around 500. Supplies and materials, I use a lot of that for outreach. And I'm actually coming up with a way to replace some of that, in terms of, developing or starting a donation account basically, and soliciting funds for outreach versus, taxpayer money. There are other like odds and ends supplies too that we get that, nothing really noteworthy worth mentioning. The in-state travels, that's, we only have one mandatory, well, I have one mandatory training that I have to go to every year. It's mandated by, the executive. No, it's at Leominster, beautiful Leominster.
That's a little close.
Yeah.
That did, for
We
your
love the
benefit, there was a joke
yeah.
yesterday that all of the trainings were somehow on the.
Yeah. No, our non-mandatory training is on the Cape. So that one I'm getting ready to pay for out of my own pocket. So veterans dues and membership. So $400, we use it for, our memberships to the MVSOA, that's the Massachusetts Veteran Service Officer Association. We have a local kind of like a subsidiary of that, which is the Western Mass Veteran Service Officer Association. So we have quarterly meetings for the WMVSOA. And, you know, that requires travel around and everything like that. And it's really, and those are the ones that we actually, those are the associations that put on the conferences at the Cape. And they're really invaluable too. There's so much networking that's done. There's so much new legislation that we talk about. Like, it's important to get that information. That's why I'm willing to spend it out of my pocket to get there. I'm not doing the veterans in the community here any service by falling behind on any of that information and contacts that I make. So the Veterans Care sold and sale, that's basically cemetery flags. It's a state mandate. We have to buy the cemetery flags. We get reimbursed 75%.
75%?
Yeah. So, and I do want to mention that we have an MOU with Westhampton, and they're paying $6,000 into the general fund to have veteran services. With the hours being cut, I don't think it's a problem right now, but we're not going to be able to reach out to other small towns who could also bring in maybe $15,000 to $25,000 realistically. I'm not willing to take on any more towns with hours cut because I'm already working more hours than I get paid for. And, you know, I have to keep my sanity too. So, and that would really be likely to, I mean, it's not a far-fetched thing that one of the local small towns would also join on and pay into a district essentially.
I guess just a clarifying question. So the education and training, the $400 for the, I guess, the CEU, which is a certificate, is that an annual?
Yeah, I'm part of NACVSO, which is the National Association of County Veteran Service Officers. So that's the agency, that's the organization that I'm accredited through as a VA claims agent.
Okay, but it's not like every other year you have to get accredited, but it's like an annual.
Yeah, it's an annual thing. You can go to the conference, you know, in person or virtually, and it's basically that's how you get all of your CEUs. Otherwise you have to do, you know, 2 different classes at $400 a piece. So we go to the, I've been going to last time I went to the virtual conference.
So is that the veterans in-state, is that related to the veterans in-state travel?
No, in-state travel is for the Leominster mandatory training.
Okay, so that's a different
Yeah.
training. Okay,
Yeah.
I just want to make sure.
And for the MVSOA conference. Yeah, I mean, and then actually the veterans benefits, basically how I figure that you have to over budget a little bit for that because there's so many unforeseens, because you can't predict the burials that we have to pay for. We have 1 to 2 per year on average, probably 2, I would say. So you have to figure out, and then we also have, which we just got the numbers the other day for the Chapter 115 rate increases. So it's increased by 4%, so which is a little higher than I expected. But I think with some of the veterans that are coming off benefits and significant ones that we got off benefits because their VA claims finally came through, that's going to save a huge chunk there. And granted, keep in mind with the veterans benefit line, the Chapter 115 benefits, that is also a reimbursable expense. So we get typically reimbursed by the state at the end of the year 75% for homeless and like rapid rehousing and homeless prevention cases. We get reimbursed 100%. So it's really all it is mostly just money there that we can't use, but we'll get it back. You know, we're using it for the veteran population. So.
Do we want to jump over to the no override scenarios? The whiplash people online.
Yeah, I kind of hit on some of that. I'm going through there, I think, but.
So yeah, what I'm seeing is the lower salary. That's because of the hour reduction.
That's the hour reduction and the current grade that I'm in. Realistically, it would be 70,294.22 with the grade increase.
Is that something we can update for the, we know that's true? I get that it's sort of like an ongoing situation.
Just a clarifying question about that. So yesterday we were told that department heads didn't lose hours. It just went from one to the other. So why is the veteran agent being cut an hour or 2 hours?
I'm assuming because the mayor had cut all AFSCME employees by 2 hours. And I know when the prior mayor was here and we took on the veterans agent, so it used to be an intermunicipal agreement as a part-time position. She took it on as a part-time position wholly in the city, and so it wasn't really viewed in their opinion as a department head at that time. So that's how it kind of got absorbed into the union. So,
But now it is a department head.
so we need to go through that process, with the union. We need to have that discussion about either removing that position or creating another position that is outside of the union. So that stuff is in the works. And then it would need to be presented to city council for creating a new position. So it's a little bit of a process.
So I just, as a department head, there's no judgment. I'm just acknowledging, I think that's, not fair.
See, I didn't even realize that. I didn't know. I thought all department heads were being cut too.
No.
So why, we kind of have our foot in both pots here.
Yep, so I'm just.
Yes, you do. Yes.
As a point of equity, I'm just acknowledging.
I appreciate that.
Okay. And then the education and training is zeroed out. Are there other, just hopping between the two, but are those the changes?
Education and, yeah, I mean, those are the ones that like, they're not mandatory, so it's up to me to take care of it, I guess. Shouldn't necessarily be, but, trying to be a team player.
Also, just as a point of equity, I think some of the other departments were cut down to $500. And so I just want to acknowledge that as well. I know there were a couple that were more than that, but the majority had cut them down to roughly $500. So just again, as a point of equity, I just want to acknowledge that.
I'm sorry, if you guys have to have like a sidebar, would you mind just stepping out in the hallway? I just think they get a little distracted. Okay. And how about the veterans benefits? Is that,
the veterans benefits, we will, I mean, there's not really any room to
Right.
take anything away.
yeah, understood.
It's like, it's based on the monthly payments that we make and, potential, we have to figure, I mean, typically when someone, new comes on, there's someone else that goes off. It's kind of it fluctuates a little bit, but it's unpredictable. And you have to plan for 2 burials for our size population.
Mhm.
You have to plan for possibly another person coming on. And also for the, I had to predict what the rate increase would be, which was actually 4%. So, yeah, I mean, it's right where it needs to be. It's, as far, based on those kind of calculations.
So that's how you came up with the, what's that, basically $250,500 there? Is that how that?
250. No, it's not that you might be looking at the wrong, I had it at,
It was 200,000.
what's that? Let me see. It went 200 to 197.5.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, well,
It's the token cut.
it was kind of like, we were looking to cut 10,000 out of the, department. I tried to do what I kind of cut 10,000 out of
I
the
see, so
department.
you took, okay, I get how that happened now.
This is just another case where I see what you did. I understand it.
Yeah.
I'm not pushing back against it, but I want the viewers to understand that there's some places in this budget so far where items have been reduced that we don't really have any control over, right? So if we say we're going to bring this item down in the budget, then yeah, technically we have a balanced budget, right? But if the demand exceeds that, we're gonna have to go for an appropriation, and we're gonna better hope that we have the free cash to do it, because we're in the same situation. It's the same thing that we're talking about with the motor vehicle repairs and the fire department. It's the same thing that we're talking about with a lot of the overtime things that we've seen. There's a lot of these things in places where we have kept these, and I don't want to make this a reflection, just to be clear, on this administration or this budget, because this is something that we've systemically done for a really long time, is that there's items that we can't predict. And so we lowball the estimate of what we think they are so that we can say, hey, this budget is balanced, even though we have years of data where it's never come in that low before, ever even once. In some of the cases, not saying that's the case here, but in some cases it is. Like when we talk about like motor vehicle repairs to an ambulance, stuff like that never comes in that low. We're putting it there. It's accounting, but it's like, I just want people to understand that like, this isn't actually an area where we have control.
Right.
So like, just keep that in mind. You know, when we reduce these budget items, what we're really doing is we're giving ourselves less of a leash before we need to go for an appropriation.
Right.
So
I want to make another point on that too, when it comes to the veterans benefits, is if we were to, what's the run out? We're out of money. We got to go for an appropriation and we have to make a payment. I mean, we can't miss those payments. We would be violating state law to miss any kind of payments. And I know, we have a system where we can kind of backtrack possibly, but it's still, the veterans benefit overall line items that I have has to be funded properly.
Yeah. So my recommendation to you, and I've made this recommendation to other people in the past, is that if you get through this fiscal year and you feel like you are getting to the point where that has a real risk of happening, just bring that up early.
Yeah.
So that we can respond. Hopefully, for us to turn something around on city council for an appropriation, A, the money needs to be there, and who knows, but like B, it'll take a week to send it to council, and then a week to send it to finance, and then a week. So it's like a 3-week turnaround. So it's better if you think like this might happen in 2 or 3 months. That's the time that we should start talking about that.
Right. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Counselors, any further questions on veterans agent or veterans benefits? Counselor Schmidt.
And apologies again if I just missed this in what you were saying, but I believe between the two budgets, we were looking at no change in that clerical position. Can you just remind me, were you saying that there's no change to that position, or were we just looking at a cut to it in both situations?
No, that position, the only change she's gonna get her her step increase according to the contract and the cost of living. And it was just based on there is a little bit of a cut for the 2 hours. So she would go from 20 hours to 18 hours if the override didn't go through.
That is not represented in the budget that I'm looking at.
So the requested is 24,724.70, and then I have the reduced amount to 23,488.47.
Yeah, but those numbers are different. What was it again? 23?
488.47.
Thank you. And just one sec. Can you make sure to work with, just because Evan and Hadel are, for whatever reason, out in the room, just work with them to make sure that gets corrected and that there's just a version control thing in the veterans budget that needs to get hammered out. Okay, Councilor Kwasinski,
Didn't have that. Okay.
did you have a question?
I just wanted to clarify, it's for 2 hours, that clerical cut?
Okay, any other counselor questions?
Also change that.
Any members of the public have any questions for the veterans agent? Anyone online? Okay.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
I think what council on agents next?
Put me back to you, JP. Just gotta take centers. Okay, so override pass budget first.
Correct.
All right. So COA was asked to make as many cuts as possible to the override pass budget. The first things to go were anything below the personnel line, so expenses. Expenses were in-state travel, which is part of our in-state travel. So that was zeroed out. And then building and equipment repair is an item in the budget for if something needs to be fixed at the COA, like we need an electrician or something like that, a new vacuum. That was put in there a couple of years ago because sometimes we would need something quickly and DPW wouldn't have it in their budget. So that was eliminated as well. And then under personnel, the instruction was for pay plan employees, no step increase. So no step increase for director, part-time clerical, and part-time van drivers. And then all else remained the same. So for override pass, no reduction in staffing and continue with level services. And that was about a, let's see here. No, that's that.
So just as a question, it says no step increases for those positions, but it does seem like some of those line items did slightly increase. Could you help me understand that?
I actually I asked for personnel expenses to be revised and given to me, and I received one for override fail, but not one for override pass, to make sure that my numbers were correct. So like under director where you see 100.52 was FY26. So that as I think is supposed to be the same for FY27. That number you see for FY27 of 178.21, that is not a step increase. So I don't know what that is. And that's $78 and change. Evan.
So that is that 0.125 instance we were talking about.
Oh,
yesterday?
yeah. Okay.
So is that not a change to rate, but it's a change to where the end of the fiscal year
Right.
falls within the pay week?
Yeah,
So
because
it's
for
the-
people who work 5 days a week, there's, that's just accounting thing. Okay, thanks for reminding me of that.
So that's 5111, but so 5112 and 5114, those are both union, and 5117 is pay plan. There's supposed to be no step increase there. And there's supposed to be no step increase under 5119 at the end.
So when we're looking at the
they don't
thing,
see the-
they don't have
they don't
the
have the
budget
account
lines. We
numbers.
just have the names.
Oh, okay, sorry. So, right, so part-time clerical and part-time van drivers, just like the other pay plan employee, are not supposed to have a step increase under override pass.
Okay.
And so, Council on Aging is about 0.5% of the total city budget. It's a very small department and mostly staffing. And so when we were asked to make cuts for the override pass budget, we were also told keep level services for that budget and not cutting staff hours. So that's what that looks like.
Okay. Sure. Pass it down.
Just, so the salaries, I get the director, which is the 81,178. But the other ones, those seem pretty significant for, so a 5-day.
I think that's an error.
Yeah, so those are, so I think those are errors. So I'm just acknowledging that.
Can I just, so one thing on that, so, have you, just say something?
My understanding was, for the full-time supervisory and full-time permanent and, Healer Brook, but those are union
They are union.
positions and those don't have the freeze on them.
Okay,
Yeah, so they
So
should
I
get their
crossed-
contractual.
they're the
stuff increases,
contractual-
So that's probably.
so they're
why.
not paper and they're not AFSMI, so.
They are.
They are
Wait,
AFSCME.
so then
So then,
shouldn't they be getting a 2-hour reduction? Like,
the 2-hour reduction comes
That's
from
on the other
Is
one.
that only for the?
So the 2-hour reduction is in override.
oh, yeah,
pay.
yeah, okay, yeah, I hear you, all right.
But isn't there a pay freeze? There's not a pay freeze.
Not on
Not
the
for,
union.
not for AFSCME
I
union employees.
see.
It's just that they
No,
get
because they have their
Okay. Yep,
contractual.
understood, thanks for clearing that up, okay. Any other, yes?
Yep, I just, again, it's not a judgment, I'm just acknowledging other departments had some in-state travel, so it's just an acknowledgement of that, and this was zeroed out, so it's just as a point of equity, I just acknowledging that.
Okay,
Did we clarify the increases we're seeing here for part-time clerical and part-time van drivers? Let's just circle back around to that real quick.
yes, sorry, I know you're doing 3 jobs right now. Yeah, I think what they're saying is that those are AFSCME positions, so in the no override budget, they will get an hours reduction, but in the override budget, that is normal that they're doing that, because
That
they're.
includes the part-time?
No,
Part-time or not.
no, the
Part-time.
So then,
Anyone under 20 hours is not considered
that's
unionized.
what I thought.
So then, that one's going up by
So that one's going up.
$600. And is that just there's a couple of those people, right? And so is that just the discrepancy for the extra day or whatever? The part-time clerical?
I will get it updated as too.
Okay, yeah. Please let me know.
And the part-time van drivers as well.
Yeah. Okay. But the part-time van drivers are or are not union,
are not.
They are not, no.
okay? But they're getting,
They shouldn't be getting any step increases or anything. They should
It's
be
almost
living.
$3,000.
yeah,
It's interesting.
okay. I'm just gonna say this once and then I can move on. Like, I wanna be really understanding of the fact that you guys have been under a lot of pressure, building 2 budgets, reacting to this in a really, really, like, this came in much later than it did in almost every other community. We had to do all of this. There's a lot going on. There's a lot to react to. It's understandable that there are mistakes in this budget. That being said, we are making, the city in requesting an override is making an enormous ask of the public. It's very, very important that the public have confidence in this process. So we're going to finish this up today, and then we're going to be going into next week. We're not going to have any budget hearings. The week after that, we're going to go back into budget hearings. By that point, I would really, really expect that these sorts of little version control things are cleaned up across the board, and that where they've been corrected in the past, we receive that clarification in writing. I'm not trying to be a jerk or anything. It's just, we're making an enormous ask. There's a lot of people who have a lot of information that they need. And these sorts of things where we are finding ourselves saying, oh, well, this was something from this version, and when we made a decision, this didn't get up. It makes sense that these things happen. But it needs to get fixed. We're all clear there? Okay. Okay, do we have any other questions before we move to the without override? Go ahead and do that. Do 3 jobs better. Okay.
After doing this for 3 hours.
You are appreciated.
So good, Con.
Do you want the actual number of what it should be for override costs, or do you just want to get that correction?
Let's just get that correction. And I mean, my understanding is that it should be basically the same, right? It should be frozen. So it's those disregard those higher numbers, look at FY26. Okay. Let's talk about what this looks like without an override.
So without an override, the same applies. So everything in override pass is in override fail plus. For full-time supervisory and full-time permanent, which is four full-timers, they will each have 2 hours cut, and the balance of what the city pays for some of the positions and what the state formula grant pays for some of the positions will significantly shift from $36,000 in the last year to over $56,000 will go into staffing from the state formula grant with override fail out of the total grant, which is $76,448, which pays for many of the other expenses that you don't see on the city budget. And I can talk about those if desired. So the burden to the amount the city will pay for staff is reduced by more than the 2 hours cut and the no pay plan step increase, because more is being shifted onto the grant. Plus, the driver hours are being reduced from 1.075 FTE total to 0.875 FTE total, which is a reduction of 5 hours per week from the 40 hours total that all four drive. The hours that are not being reduced are the part-time clerical who works the reception desk in the mornings and the director. In addition, the instruction is to close the COA 1 day per week, specifically on Fridays. And so, we can talk about impacts if desired, but that's what you don't see reflected here is, in addition to those reductions in staffing and cost of staffing to the city side, is the reduction of the COA's open hours by 20%.
So could you just reiterate some of the numbers that you mentioned for the driver reductions?
Yep. So the driver reduction is no step increase plus going from put it this way. The drivers have been driving about 40 hours a week for some years total for all four. We always talk about all four together because each of them, their schedules vary daily. And now we're going down to 0.875 of an FTE. So we're going down to, down by 5 hours per week. And that was done because if we're closed on Fridays, the average number of hours the drivers work together on Fridays is about anywhere from 7 to 9 hours, but we chose 5 hours to reduce it because there's a very key service that's delivered on Fridays that we would move to another day, which is it's over 50% of the grocery shopping that we take people to do. So we didn't want to cut that. It's so essential. So we're moving that. So that's why we're not cutting all, and remember the drivers are paid like $20 an hour. So the difference of like $40 a week gross. But it enabled us to save grocery shopping.
I would like to hear more about, like you said, you know, some of these budgets, you've got a revenue source, which is the city revenue, and a revenue source which is outside of that. And you're not the first person to say, well, we basically put more on that other revenue source, but that means that there's things that you're currently doing with that revenue, that grant, that you wouldn't be able to do because you'd be using it to cover expenses that would otherwise be in this budget. So can you talk about some of the things that wouldn't get done or purchased?
Yes. So the plan right now, you know, we have to talk about this with our board and review priorities for, but the plan right now is that programming that we heavily subsidize the cost of so that the typical person in Easthampton can afford it or that we make free. If we continued that programming, it wouldn't allow the room to bring more staffing onto the grant. So just as an example, catering, COA does not have a commercial kitchen. It does not have a dining room. We don't have a dining program. So if we ever want to bring people together for socialization with a meal, we have to hire catering. So in our budget for 2026, we're not spending it all, but we did budget for just over $15,000 for catering, and figuring that would go up by like 3% we increased that to 16,000 for FY27. It is now zero. There will be no catering events at the COA. Another area that we cut, we have planned to do direct mailings because some people say that they don't know about the COA for too long, despite the amount of marketing that we do. So we were going to increase our postage to account for at least one direct mailing a year in advance of Medicare open enrollment. That is being cut so that we're just doing the most basic postage, like sending in fuel assistance applications or other things that can't be faxed. In-state travel and training, we are severely reducing that so that we, that's a quality issue that we should all be keeping up with the latest that councils on aging are keeping up with, but we're severely reducing that. Any kind of tickets that we would cover the cost of for residents so that they can attend cultural and recreational and social things that cost money where we're not given free tickets. That's, like $1,000, $1,500 a year. We're zeroing that out. So if we do something like that, people would have to pay for their own tickets. But also, we're not going to take all of those trips that we take now because we're reducing driver hours and we're compressing as much as we can into 4 days. And also because the hours, stop me if I'm going on too long, because the hours of staff are being reduced, staff won't be able to flex their hours and provide coverage at the COA and be able to then say, work until 10 o'clock at night, taking people to UMass to see a play and to go to a meal and those kinds of trips that people don't get to do on their own, that they can only do with an ADA van and with us and with staff help. Many of those will be cut in favor of staying closer to home. So those are the kinds of things that are being cut. Luckily, there's a lot of in-kind support from other departments for software, fuel for the vehicles, utilities. COA doesn't pay for utilities. We don't pay for our benefits. So the grant and other donations revenue doesn't have to cover those things. Otherwise, we would be really in a pickle. This grant will still be able to cover instructors that we bring on because we have to have vetted, high quality, insured instructors for fitness and other things. So that's the other main expense on this grant besides the staffing is about, we project, we might not spend it all because we're down a couple of teachers right now, about $17,500 towards contracted instructors. So basically that grant will be staffing and be instructors, and then a little bit for postage, a tiny bit for travel. And then we have to pay dues to the Mass Councils on Aging. So we have to pay that. That's per how many older adults you have. Yep. Any other questions about, and the formula grant, just so people understand, it is still up in front of the legislature, but it looks like it's going to be $16 per older adult, the same as this past year per year. And that's times 4,778 people age 60 plus. So that grant is just over $76,400.
Okay.
Councilor Schmidt. So you had mentioned you mentioned no longer being able to provide catering and those types of events. When I was speaking with a member of the community, they mentioned programs where folks are able to pick up meals to go. First, is that true? That's something that you're offering, and is that similarly impacted?
So right now we offer the Highland Valley Grab and Go meal, which is the same as Meals on Wheels. It's like a shrink wrapped meal that's free to people. We distribute those Wednesdays and Fridays. If we're closed on Fridays, we wouldn't do that distribution on Fridays. There's the potential that we could move it, but we've been very short on the volunteers to distribute that, even with senior tax work off. So because it's a whole schlep to Northampton and back. So staff does that Friday one, and we don't know yet. So if we move that, then we'll be back where we were, a few years ago, where with staff doing it, it just cuts down on other things staff can do, like their one-to-one appointments or having to cover for lunch or a class. It happens at lunchtime. So we would try to move that. And we would hope we could find more volunteers. Go ahead.
So you had mentioned staff that will be losing 2 hours from their schedules. You've also mentioned the potential of closing on Fridays. And so that obviously creates a situation where people are trying to rearrange their schedules but have one less day to do it. And I say this, sort of to bring up this complication to the public listening to this conversation. But also, I guess my question is, do you foresee a solution to that beyond people working beyond 8-hour workdays? Would there be any working from home allowed on Fridays? I wonder if you could just speak a little bit more to that particular complication that arises from not passing the override. Does that make any sense?
So if the override is not passed, the COA is closed on Fridays. None of the staff will work on Fridays, except that I will remain at the 35-hour week, but I have to cover the COA during when there are staff present to provide support and oversight to them. So the new schedule would be for the people who will be cut from, the 2 people being cut from 35 hours to 33 hours, their schedule will be 7:45 a.m. to 5 p.m. and I will be covering them. So my schedule Monday through Thursday will be 33 hours, and I'll just have 2 hours left on Friday to keep up with correspondence. So we will not be open on Fridays. The open hours of COA, we'll be discussing with the board on Tuesday. Any other questions about did I answer your question about the hours?
Not quite. In fact, I came out of that with an additional question, which is, we're not saying that the 7:45 to 5, that's just the coverage required. We're not saying any one individual would be covering that.
So we have, so subtracting the drivers, there are 6 staff. The office aide, opens and would be there from just before 8 until just after noon. The activity and program people, they each have different schedules from each other. So one is 7.5 hours, 4 days a week, and the other one is 9 hours, 2 days, and 6 hours, 2 days. And then the outreach worker and the clerk will be the 7:45 to 5-ish, around there. And then I would be 7:45 to 5 plus 2 hours on Friday. Does that answer your question?
I think so. Yeah.
And so the program people are going down from 30 hours weekly to 28 hours weekly. So actually, we still have to work out what their exact schedules would be.
And so if I'm hearing right, though, at least as far as your schedule is concerned, if you're covering 7:45 to 5, that is a 9 and change hour.
We're not paid for lunch. We have to take a 1-hour lunch break.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
First, I just want to acknowledge I was coming out of a doctor's appointment today and there was a council on aging van dropping somebody off, right? So I think it's important to note how important this service is to residents and obviously in particular to seniors. I'm a little bit confused about, again, the numbers, and maybe these need to be updated, I'm not sure, but the requested amount is significantly lower than in 2026, and in other departments that change was not as significant. So I guess I just don't understand why these are, I mean, we're talking thousands. Right?
So I can address, so the override fail budget for COA is 13.5% different from the original ask that we brought into the mayor. And the override pass budget is 9% lower than the original ask we brought into the mayor for FY27. So those percentages are significantly different than some departments, but I'm not aware of the percentage for each department.
Right. That just seems very odd.
If I may, I think maybe some of that too is coming from the grant funding that's being moved around. And so it's not like, which there is, of course, a whole other budget, I believe. For
So that will supplement these. Okay.
Yes.
I got you.
So can I address this? So a financial management thing to note about that is that grant is up for reduction, staying the same or increasing each year. And then in January, the governor has made 9C cuts in the past that have cut that grant. So it's important to note that 3 staff people are being more at risk of cuts if there are significant cuts on the city side, and then there are also cuts on the state side at the same time. That puts 3 positions at risk for a total of, well, it was 1.5 plus 0.45. So it was almost 2 FTEs. Now it will be slightly less because of the reductions. Yeah.
I just didn't understand that the grant was a separate budget.
All right. Any other questions, councilors? Anyone from the public have any questions, comments about the council on aging?
I distinctly get the impression that these cuts are hurting people in very strong ways in terms of the people who are citizens who need services.
So can you just keep it to questions?
Yeah, and the question is, if you close on Fridays and Wednesday and Friday are the grand delivery days, what's gonna happen if you drive and go? You get picked up and delivered, and people have meals, I presumably for Friday or for the weekend. Does that mean that they won't get Friday meals? They'll get pick up on Thursday? Or will they not get meals for the weekend? Do they not get them now? How does that all work? And I'm thinking about the individual who isn't gonna get delivered,
I think,
or maybe I didn't hear right.
so so the budgetary impact of each budget on what programs and services will be retained versus reduced versus eliminated is complex. And we will be talking about that at the board meeting on Tuesday. I can just say that the services for food, either the grab and go delivery or the grocery shopping, are first on the list to be moved. And the impact of moving them to other days and what that would do to the other services being delivered on those days, we can talk about that more, but it seems more programmatic than budgetary. So I defer to the committee how much you really want me to go into that, please.
I think that that's a fair thing, and I would encourage people to try and make it to that if they can. But I mean, I think that you've done a good job of showing that there's all of these things are very interlinked, and from the sense of it, exactly how you figure out some of this is in part a question of how your board wants to play it out. But I think we all grasp that it's going to be tricky. Any other questions from the public? All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Next up, we have Health Department.
Unfortunately, our health director is out sick today.
Sorry.
He would be able to join on the 27th or 28th if you would like. Do that day.
Let's do that. I don't
He's
want to.
the most knowledgeable on his department's budget.
I don't want to leave someone else hanging.
Yeah.
We'll move that on. Okay. So then we can move to unclassified. All right.
So under public safety, we have not done inspection services.
Oh,
Are we going to move that to the next meeting too?
well,
I'm also not quite sure if the building, he might be online. I'm not sure David is here or not.
I don't think he is. I don't think he was aware he was supposed to be here. I talked to him this morning and he didn't know.
I will reach out to him about the 27th and 28th as well.
yeah, let's do that. Okay. Let's talk about unclassified.
So I will speak to some portions and then I will leave some portions to the treasurer's department of the audit to speak on because it's kind of a collaboration of several departments when it comes to unclassifieds. So unfortunately, most of these numbers are a little unmovable because they are either contractual and obligated for us to be covered, or we won't have benefits if we don't do these things. And some of them unfortunately are a little bit of moving targets too. So we make projections and do the best that we can, but it doesn't always come out perfectly. So based on my conversations, we use Maya insurance for our workers' comp insurance and our liability insurance. So the numbers that I gave for fiscal year 27 are pretty much in line with what they projected our premiums to be, with a little bit of buffer room because we do get mid-year adjustments. So sometimes, I'm sorry, I'm starting with the workers' comp. At the top. So there should be
At the top.
Yeah, I apologize. So there's the contributory retirement, which I will let the treasurer speak to. And then I will speak to the workers' comp and the 111F.
Yep. Okay,
So workers' comp, the school related and the city related are through Maya Insurance. So they usually kind of give us a projection on our premiums, but then there are mid-year adjustments because they do a mid-year audit. So sometimes we do end up owing additional throughout the year because it's based on the number of employees we have and the type of positions that they hold, and their workers' comp rating for those positions. And then the 111F is for fire and police. So they have a separate workers' comp based on Mass General Law. So we use a different company to do theirs. That is done through BFIS. So I did get the numbers for that, so that number is pretty accurate. And they do not do mid-year adjustments because we pay the admin fee and we pay the premium, and they will cover. We pay a deductible to them of $10,000, and then they'll cover anything over that deductible cost. So, and then moving on down, I will let the finance team speak to Medicare, but I will speak to the school-related Chapter 32B. There's also the school retirees, the city insurance, and the city retirees. So we did have quite a large increase this year. We had about a 38% increase. We had anticipated 18% based off of last year, but we did have a mid-year increase of another 20% in October, which later we'll talk about that appropriation. But we had budgeted according to the 18, so now we're budgeting according to this year. We are having a 12.5% increase with some deductible changes. So that's how those numbers were budgeted. And the way that we do that is every month I track our expenses that we've paid for each of those line items. And then we kind of estimate how much it's going to be for the next year, because a lot of times people move from family plans to double plans to whatever. They're shifting all the time, so we can only calculate so much, or whether they're going to move off the plan or on the plan, qualifying life events. So those are always kind of guesstimations. And then moving on down again to school liability insurance and city liability insurance. Those are also through Maya Insurance. And that's things like our cybersecurity, our property, everything along those professional. If we have lawsuits, it covers all those expenses. And again, those are moving targets, because if we add a new vehicle or we have a lawsuit or something like that that comes up mid-year, we do have deductibles for those things that we have to pay. So, but we also get a lot of credits because we do a lot of trainings and things. So we try to really encourage people to do trainings and then get credit for those trainings to then kind of offset some of the expenses that we have. So, and then moving on down, I will let finance speak to OPEB and reserve fund. And then I know for unemployment, that is always a set amount that we have every year. So.
Not so much a question, but I just want to reiterate something that I feel like I just heard you say, or at least put it in some different words.
Absolutely.
We are receiving credits to decrease the cost of city insurance if we are doing training.
Absolutely.
I'll remind everybody that we have seen again and again the places where we have cut from training budgets. Surely there will be fallout from that.
Absolutely. And we try, Maya Insurance is so good about trying to send out free trainings, but there's only so much you can do for free, right? We just did this last year. They did a firefighter simulation training on site for us, which was awesome. They did that for actually fire, police, and DPW did it. So that was an incredible thing for everybody to get to experience. So hopefully not so many car crashes.
Yeah. Can we, this is all great. Can we just talk a bit more about the insurance items?
Absolutely.
Just because
I know this is an item that's come up a lot in
Yeah.
the sort of public discourse about this. And I just kind of like, could you just give us like a better sense, kind of like if you're just tuning in for the first time, like what's going on with all of this?
Yes. So to give a broad overview, I mean, I think it's unfortunately an epidemic across the nation, I believe, when it comes to health insurance premiums and costs and prescription costs and all those things. I think it's just an unfortunate time we're in where there needs to be some kind of probably a national change, but unfortunately we can't control those things. So we're dealing with it, at this lower level as best as we can. And we're part of what's called the Hampshire County Group Insurance Trust. That's our insurance provider. So it's almost like we're self-funded, but a joint body of 73 municipalities that are self-funded together. And the trust has been really healthy for several years, has always had great reserve funding and everything. But over the last couple years, I mean, primarily there was COVID, where I think a lot of people weren't seeking necessary medical treatments that they should have, right, out of fear or whatever it was. So the reserves were healthy, but then coming out of that, people started to seek things again. And then GLP-1s came in, which were astronomically expensive from the provider side. I think it was, I can't remember exactly how much, but it was like $1,400 a month or something per person who was using those that the insurance company was paying. So $1,400 a month is a lot of money to be putting out for however many people are on it. And they're great medications, but that was just starting to drain our reserve funding astronomically. And the trust hadn't had major premium increases over the last years because it hadn't needed them, which maybe they should have been a little bit more proactive in that, but hindsight's 2020, right? So we ended up in this position where all the reserve funding was being eaten up at the trust, and they were in a position where they needed to get funding fast or the trust would close and everyone would be out of insurance. So we had our regular premium increase in July, which was pretty standard. 18% was a bit high, but it was anticipated. But because of what was going on with the reserve funding being eaten up, October, they decided to implement another 20% premium increase and then to cut off the GLP-1s unless if they were being used for dietary or diabetic purposes. So if they were only being used for weight loss, they decided to get rid of those. And at that point, also the trust had hired a consulting group around October, November, called the HILP group to come in and assess the trust and help us to recover. And I do have to say it has been amazing working with the HILP group, and I am very, very confident in the position of the trust now. Going forward, we have a really involved executive committee that was meeting weekly for a while. We've made it down to bi-weekly now, but was really involved and really cared about making sure we were getting to a healthier place so that then we never end up in a position like this again. But apart from the trust, the city, we are going to do our due diligence and assess other insurance options to make sure that the trust is the best place to be, or should we look at GIC? Should we look at some other kind of structure? And I have met with the IAC committee and asked them to also partake in that process to give us input as unions as to what they would like to see for their benefits. So we will be doing that this year just to make sure we're looking holistically at things, because we know this is an astronomical expense on the city and on the residents.
So just, I'm just looking at like the Chapter 32B insurances.
Yes.
Those have doubled
Because of that,
since
yeah,
from
because it was
1.4 million to 2.9 million in, what is that, 4 years?
yeah, isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What a great system we have. All right. Is this one of the ones like, do we have a very different budget in the case of the override failing?
There were some slight adjustments to numbers, and really those adjustments were primarily because we did it like a month later when we had some new premiums, so things just looked a little different.
But this one wasn't updated.
So the override budget is slightly different just because we did it based off of, this budget was based off of, I believe, a 13% to give us a little buffer room. I think the other one was based off of 12.5%, which was the actual increase, but it was also done at a later date. So the number, there is one or two numbers that actually looks like $10,000 higher, but it's because that line item had some higher premiums or something. So I can even work with the finance team to even give you guys better, more updated numbers, just because we've paid more months premium. So we're getting closer to the end of the fiscal year, if that would be
I would
beneficial.
always appreciate the most up-to-date information.
Absolutely.
So let's understand this. So let's look at chapter 32B insurances.
Yeah.
So there's a slight increase, right?
Yes.
But if we're laying off people, that means there's less people paying into that. So would that not make that go up even further?
So it's hard to say again, like how many of those people had insurance? That's going to be hard. That's something I'm going to have to calculate later, right? And then how many people were on family plans or single plans? Those things are a little hard to calculate. So reducing those from the line item might be challenging, but
I'm just thinking of the pool, right? If we're all paying into it and there's fewer people paying into it, wouldn't that have an impact?
Oh, on the overall premium cost? No, not at this point. Luckily, the Hill Group did do an assessment because some people did leave the trust. And luckily, our claims versus premium ratio was still even, and we were still in the green.
Someone asked me that, so I.
Oh, no, absolutely. Thank you. That's a very good question.
So actually I have a follow-up question. Does the no override budget that we are seeing here reflect the staffing reductions that the other departments?
I did not plan on that, no, because I think it's too hard to calculate. And I think it's you could try to take away if there's 30 people being laid off in the school department, you could try to guess that maybe they had a double plan as average or something, but it's hard to calculate those things.
I appreciate that calculating them to a precise number is difficult, but I just feel like
maybe we should adjust that
we
more.
should at least attempt to estimate
Absolutely.
these things. I mean, I know we just talked to the police chief and he knows the people who would be laid off, you know? So I'm just wondering if at this point we have enough information to make those sorts of adjustments. And then the other thing is is this where unemployment where does that show up in the budget? Like
unemployment is the $75,000 at the bottom, and that is a set number. I don't know how is that number set, Hadel? Like where did that come from?
It's part of the financial policies, and what happens, it goes in the month of July, I make a transfer into an unemployment fund itself. So we have a running balance. So we contribute every year a set amount. And if we don't end up using it, it sits in that separate fund, which is 083 fund on my side. And it has full access to spend if needed without city council approval, because the approval is in the form of the $75,000.
So then let me just, I guess, ask this in the bluntest way I can, and I apologize for that. Do we have currently enough in employment that if we end up laying off 30 plus 40 something
We'll have to go for an
employees,
appropriation.
well, shouldn't that just be in the budget then? Like if we know that that's,
So the reason it's not part of the budget, we have about, if I remember correctly, $180,000 in that fund. And the reason I would not increase the budget amount is because it's going to be one-time money. I'd rather supplement it with a one-time free cash than raising it on the taxation.
Do we have the free cash to do that right now? Because
We'll
those people
toss
get
it-
laid off, like
Yeah,
when the
so-
budget passes, we aren't getting free cash certified till the fall. So what's the workflow here?
So I do not know what the dollar amount is going to be for the, when we lay off people, but I do know that there is a limited number of weeks they get paid for unemployment.
Mhm.
That's gonna be another calculation which we have to do once we find out whether override has passed or not. So that's where it's, once we know whether the override is passed or not, there's gonna be a real true adjustment to the budget. And I think that's what would be the time between June 9th to June 17th is gonna, like, the finance team is gonna work on it.
I'm not completely comfortable with that, to be honest. Like, I understand what you're saying, but I just, like, these are known, we have other places in this budget in which we are making changes that we know have financial consequences that will affect the amount that we spend in this amount. We know how much we have in free cash right now. I don't want to pass a budget until I know that we actually have the money, and also that we can understand that, like, if that's going to bring up our unemployment spending, right? And we don't have the free cash to make that happen until October, and those poor people are losing their jobs now, then we're going to have to increase it in the budget because we're also getting that money.
So, I hear what you're saying, but at the same time, if we have about $180,000 plus this $75,000 will be added in July.
Mhm.
If that calculation needs to come from the personnel once we know which positions are going away and who's going to apply for unemployment, and there will be people who will be finding job within 2 weeks. So if they get the job, they don't qualify for unemployment. So there is a lot of unknowns in this whole calculation, and raising it on the taxation is not appropriate. We'd rather come back for a one-time money.
But from where?
It could be from free cash or it could be from general stabilization.
My understanding.
We can't have that calculation at this point. I cannot turn around and say it's gonna be $180,000 for laying off 40 people or 30 people. There's no real, like, we have to deal with that when time comes. But for now, we have about 180 plus $75,000 in that bucket.
Can somebody at least try and estimate how far that's going to get us? Because I'm concerned that we're going to find ourselves in a situation where we don't have free cash. This plan that we have right here involves moving general stabilization money into this no override budget. And so I'm wondering where I want to understand where we have the cash that we're going to cover that, because I want to make sure that we're not in a situation where we need to make even deeper cuts so that we can preserve some of our general stabilization to shore up this account. That's my big concern here, right? Like, if we can't put it on the taxpayers, then we've got to find the money. And so I need to know what the plan is here. Like, because if it's not going to go into the budget, and it's not going to come out of free cash because we're almost done with that, and it's not going to come out of general stabilization because that's shored up, then I don't know what the plan is there, and that freaks me out. So if you guys can just figure something out, just send us an email. It doesn't need to be this week. Before we pass this on June 1st, I need to understand what the plan is here, and I need to understand if that plan requires us to make any changes to these numbers or to make further cuts in order to accommodate us having enough general stabilization to cover this. Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, questions from the public? Yes, sir.
Hi.
Thanks for
like I
sticking
said
with
before, I've
us.
been through this a few times. So generally, the way unemployment used to work, and I was in business, not in industry, not with a city or anything like that. There's a fund that like she says, $180,000 in that fund. And if you start drawing down on it, this is the way it used to, if you start drawing down on it, that comes down, the state pays that. I think, is it, you go through the state?
We do, and then we reimburse the state.
Okay.
Yeah.
The way it used to work, and I don't know if it's still the same, you draw the money down and the state keeps paying, but then your rate going forward over time is going to increase till you build up your reserve again. That's the way it used to work.
Mhm.
So you can draw the money down. Once you do, your rate's going to start going up, and over time it'll even out again. But the thing to remember is, even if you pay out 6 months of wages for that, it's not going to be at 100%. There's caps.
Mhm.
The other thing is, once that unemployment runs out, you're not paying for that anymore. So for a half a year this year, you're gonna save half a year's wages on this year, and one year's wages going forward every single year. You don't hire people back. So this is a short-term additional expense going forward for a longer-term gain. If you want to call losing people a gain, it's a reduced expense.
I understand that. I just want to make sure that.
I just want to make sure everyone understands it. So
funds
we're worried about this, and we need to be worried about this. That's all. That's all I'm saying. The other thing is on health insurance. Our health insurance should go down over time. There's probably some severance things that go into the contracts that say you're gonna pay for health insurance for so many months or for a year. Again, if you don't rehire those people over time, you're gonna save that premium every single year. So short-term pain, longer-term gain. It's really hard to look at this stuff because having gone through this, I mean, you're losing your friends and your coworkers, and it's really tough. But if you do some of that, you tend to survive, and my company survived. We went through this a couple of times. It's excruciating. You survive it and you move on, and the company was better off for it, and over the long term, you guys maybe too, maybe not. So I don't know. The other thing I want to point out is just this override is supremely expensive. If I look back at what my real estate tax went up for the last 8 years, it went up 5.26%. So although we didn't get a 2.5 override during those years, we were paying for capital improvements. So that's really expensive. So the net to the taxpayer has been 5.26% increase in real estate tax. That's what the number is. It's not 2.5%. It's 5.25%. So we paid a lot more than that. So just keep in mind when you ask for this is a burden on a lot of people. My Social Security goes up 3%, and you're asking for a boatload of money. If that goes up, I will never. Others in the city are going to be the same thing. And it's just a huge amount of money. It's huge. You guys are right. It's the biggest cost increase. If you look at this, is the unclassified. That's the biggest change here. Second biggest is schools.
And we'll touch on that in a couple of days.
And the third biggest is, just because of their size, is public safety. So fringe benefits are number one, education is number two, and public service is number three. And these are like unclassified and education dwarfs what everything else is. It absolutely dwarfs it. They're not even close. It's like rounding.
It's true.
So look at, just my suggestion is look at the big numbers. Don't get caught up in the small stuff. Look at the big numbers. What can we do and what do we have to do? And keep in mind, we've already asked for taxpayers to increase their payouts to the city every single year. And we have. We funded the schools. We did that. And years ago, we funded a new municipal building. We're not unaware of what's going on, but we have made a lot of contributions in funding. This is just going to put us all over the edge. Seniors that live in a fixed budget, they're not going to be able to afford this. If they have a home, they're not going to be able to afford it. If you're lucky enough to have a pension or a nice IRA balance, good for you. If you're not, you're really hurting. And our costs are going up the same as you guys are. Same exact thing. And all you're gonna do is a shift the burden from you to me. That's all you're gonna do.
Understand. Thank you.
I'm sorry, it's just,
It's good.
can I make one more comment?
Yes, although we are talking about the unclassified budget, so let's try and keep it within those parameters.
I'm quiet. Thank you.
Any other?
Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments on the unclassified?
On the
budget?
unclassified budget, I appreciate Councilor Peak's effort to drill down and try to get an understanding of the expenses, especially the ones he's mentioned, but the 32B health insurance expenses, it seems to me if you have an employee and then you don't have an employee and you know who those two employees are, you know whether you can figure out whether they're getting health insurance and what type of health insurance, and know how much that cost is going to be reduced if the override doesn't go through. It would seem to me that you could do the same with the school employees. They must know who the people are going to be first in, first out. Are they getting health insurance or aren't they? Those are figures I think people in the city and the council will want to know.
Absolutely. We didn't have those numbers or those people from the school until this week. So I'm happy to work with that list and nail down better numbers now that I have those people.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
With all this stuff, we understand there's uncertainty, but just anything's better than, an estimate's better than nothing.
Absolutely.
Anyone online? Okay. I think that's it for unclassified. So I guess the question now is, do we want to do this appropriation or do we want to? I'd rather just do it now, frankly.
I'm here.
Can I ask her a question on the revenue side? Is that okay?
We're gonna, you can certainly ask Hadel whatever questions you want, but in terms of this meeting, we're turning to talking about an appropriation.
Can I wait till the end? And can I ask her the question?
Hadel, if you're comfortable answering questions, then, I mean, you're off the clock, I assume, but,
The two of you really know what's going on, so that's pretty good.
all right. So,
Yeah.
Have our things. Yes. Okay, thank you.
So as previously discussed, we did have a mid-year increase of 20% that was unanticipated for health insurance. So our budgeted projections on health insurance unfortunately do not cover us through the remainder of the fiscal year. So along with Hadel from audit, we calculated based off of our expenditures this year, what we have remaining left, how much we would need to cover us through the remainder of the year. And I am pleased to say that it is less than we originally anticipated, because originally we were anticipating coming before you with about a $1.2 million appropriation for health insurance. So coming to you with $870,000, it's still painful, but I mean, it is a better position than I think we originally anticipated. And this is to cover our employees and their insurance through the end of July.
so first thing I want to say about this is it doesn't really feel like we have an option to not vote on this. So
I'm sorry.
that is what it is. But there's a couple things I just want to, so we budgeted last year. 1.86 for this. Is that correct? 1.88, 1 million.
So it'd be all four of those categories.
Oh, it's all
So
of them.
school related,
Okay.
city, yeah, all four of those.
Okay, yep, that does it. All right. Well. Counselors, any questions?
Can you say what the originally anticipated amount was one more time?
Originally, we're looking at about 1.2 million. So we came in a little bit lower, which I think was due to a lot of people moving off the plan at that time to spouses plans.
And again, so as I understand, this is calculated quarterly. That's what I make sure I'm understanding.
So we pay monthly for insurance. And every month we track how much we spend, and then we'll kind of project based off of the last month's, what we're gonna be spending in the next month. So this will cover, because we pay 1 month in advance, and we pay for July's coverage in this fiscal year. So it'll cover, May, June, and July.
Okay, so it's- Okay. I mean, it's unfortunate. It's not a surprise. You know, we've known this is coming for a while. Hida, what would be our free cash balance after this?
I do not have it handy. I'll send an email to you guys
Okay.
if that's okay.
Yeah, my guess is that it's not very much though, right? Because,
We have more appropriation coming to the city council. I'll be working over the weekend for those numbers. So I would be able to provide you once I have the definite number.
okay. Yes, please email us that when you have it. Any other questions, comments? I'd entertain a motion to recommend this appropriation to the full council.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor? Aye. Motion passes. Okay. I think that's about all I've gotten me for tonight. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion second, all in favor? Aye. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, everyone, for online for hanging in there. We'll see you in a week and a half.
And our local cable subscribers.